once they meet legal and ministry standards. Speaking to media on his second day in office, Lee said he's reviewing documents and will consult with department heads. On the proposed $45 million mall in Port of Spain, Lee said it appears to have potential but must undergo full review. He noted the project falls under the East Port of Spain Development Company and funding details will be examined before any final decision is made. Former Prime Minister Stuart Young has criticized Prime Minister Kamala Persad-Bissessa's plan to seek gas from Grenada, Guyana and Suriname, warning that those options are years away from being viable. At a May 5th media briefing, Young said Grenada has no proven reserves and infrastructure is lacking. He also warned that pipelines from Guyana or Suriname would cross Venezuelan waters, making Venezuela unavoidable in any regional energy plans. Young dismissed claims that the Dragon gas deal is dead, insisting negotiations with the U.S. are still possible and that proven reserves are already in place. Government ministers hit the ground running on May 5th, meeting with staff and assessing their ministries. Some, like OPM Minister Barry Padarath, reported challenges such as mold and flooding at Whitehall. Others, like Social Services Minister Vandana Mohit, said they were ready to work from day one. New Finance Minister Dave Tanku received briefings and said he looks forward to a strong partnership with his team. Rural Development Minister Khadija Amin has already ordered flood mitigation plans and shelter SOPs. Education Minister Dr. Michael Dowlath and his team have begun reviewing policies and programs, calling it a major assignment. The Energy Chamber has welcomed the government's plans to pursue natural gas opportunities with Grenada. Prime Minister Kamala Persad-Bissessa and Energy Minister Dr. Rudal Munilal expressed intent to explore gas resources in Grenada waters. The Nutmeg field, first drilled in 2017, remains largely untapped. The Chamber sees a chance for both countries to benefit economically through shared infrastructure. Meanwhile, discussions are also underway to explore energy partnerships with Guyana and Suriname. Well, that's your news to the hour on WESN. I'm Naomi McNish. Thanks for watching.
WESN.
My name is Dr. Stephen Carroll, the CEO at Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist, and we are committed to making good private health care affordable.
For all your medical needs, including dental, radiology, laparoscopy, behavioral and mental health, along with many other services, contact us for more information at 235-5479.
Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
Pastor J, I want to get a tattoo.
You really want
to me. Respond to me how you would respond to me.
The first question I'll ask is why?
Controversial taboo topics.
We get so consumed by church, we forget that we have to live the life of being a Christian outside of the Sunday.
Like you say, we think going to a service makes us a Christian.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
So we are about to hear the second time Pastor J wanted to take a tattoo.
Would have been late last year and early this year.
Oh gosh.
Hope Unfiltered podcast with Pastor J and Ren.
Fanzone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
The best laptops and tablets are at dbesttoys.com. Get a Gateway 14.1-inch Ultra Slim notebook or an HP 14-inch laptop at the best prices in TNT. Get the Fire 7 tablet for $474. You can also shop the latest Amazon Fire Sticks. Call now at 32-DBEST to order or visit us in-store at Forces flagship Mac Bean. Shop online now at dbesttoys.com. Free delivery available throughout Trinidad and Tobago. Cash or links on delivery.
Our award-winning show is back, and this season promises to be even more exciting than before. What's Up, Doc isn't just a title. It's a call to action for anyone who wants to improve their health and well-being. Join us on this thrilling ride towards better health on WESN Content Capital.
SM Group International Limited, your solutions partner for the latest innovations, brands and competent staff to meet your needs. We provide products and services in the following divisions: executive services, event rental and services, power and heavy equipment, construction and property management, food and beverage, aggregate and sales and distribution. Check out more on our products and services at www.smgrouptt.com. Contact us at 221-7445 or email at info@smgrouptt.com. We are SM Group International, your solutions partner.
The best birthday gifts are at thebesttoys.com. Shop for the best brands you love at the best prices, like VTech, Leapfrog, Fisher Price, Play-Doh, Hot Wheels, Barbie, Cocomelon, LOL, Baby Alive, Crayola. Visit us in store at Forces Flagship MacBean. Shop online now at thebesttoys.com. Order via call or WhatsApp at 32DBEST to order. And remember, we have the best toys at the best prices.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity, from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378, or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
This is 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson. The distance from where we should be in the world in going forward on our commitments with climate change.
The effects of climate change that cannot be accounted for. It's called loss and damage, and we're seeing loss and damage happening so much more in this decade and the previous decade.
The principal term there was this question of the correspondent banking issues.
That is why we're trying to build capacity with this country here, Trinidad and Tobago, and other countries in the region. Man is not showing any signs of stopping or even slowing down. More than half of the forest in Trinidad is already gone.
All the plants and all the animals and all of the nice clean water and fresh air and everything had to be on this planet for humanity to have a chance.
We have small change when it comes to countries that can take decisions, and when they speak, the world listens.
The General Assembly is a very democratic forum. And Trinidad and Tobago has the same vote as Canada, in spite of the obvious difference in size.
We are tackling the hard-hitting topics, some controversial topics, some topics we sweep under the rug. You don't always have to forgive in a relationship for it to move forward.
If it is you are in a situation where you forgive the person, but to the detriment of yourself, what are you really doing?
It is very uncommon for somebody in the younger age group to have dementia.
Atheists don't not believe.
Is that I can't disprove God, but you also can't prove God, so we kind of at a stalemate.
They'll focus on the woman who's being the victim, or the man is being the victim.
we exclude the children.
Folks are trying to study the underlying brain mechanism to figure out how does this particular disorder happen in the brain? How is the brain processing this?
Don't worry about AI, worry about humans working with AI.
Are you willing to learn new skills to stay relevant for the future job market? That's the challenge that people are going to struggle with.
This is Face of Sports, WESN Content Capital. How you felt about the kiss on the lip?
That's the business. I'm not to do with that.
I find that was distasteful.
The national senior team, whether you like it or not, that is the model for all other teams to follow.
I'm assuming that the regional requirement may be a much stricter requirement.
This is not about Pro League and Super League. This is a league run by the normalization committee that I'm responsible for.
Nobody expected FIFA to fund this arrangement.
If we don't get a professional attitude towards this, we are doomed for failure.
You break the balance, trip the leg, control the body.
They ain't gonna stand put forever.
Why you want the Chiefs to lose so? Why you want the Chiefs to lose so?
They already have two. Lamar don't
Why?
have.
You're jealous because you know the Chiefs getting closer to the Patriots. Let's go to the last part. Let's go to the last part.
You are watching Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Just give an overview of what exactly is that split arrangement.
Now you don't need to register nothing. We can do that another time. But then it becomes a hit, and then everybody starts to want to claim.
The laws that predate many of the independent countries' constitutions are going to be those colonial laws.
We know there are an infinite amount of circumstances that would lead to a murder.
I have a great idea and I have a great concept, but until it's actually expressed, it does not become intellectual property.
Accomplishments or targets of a forensic accountant is to quantify what may have been lost.
We believe in different criminals and we manipulated the law and we exploited the system.
A responsible journalist will reach out to the person who they have the information on for a comment.
Passenger, I want to get a tattoo.
You really
respond
wanna-
to me.
respond to
me.
you?
How you would respond to me?
The first question I'll ask is why.
Controversial taboo topics.
We get so consumed by church, we forget that we have to live the life of being a Christian outside of the Sunday.
Like you say,
services.
we think going to a service makes us a Christian.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right. So we are about to hear the second time Pastor J wanted to take a tattoo.
Would have been late last year and early this year.
Oh gosh.
Hope Unfiltered podcast with Pastor J and Ren.
Money is something we all deal with, but how many of us truly understand it? What if you could make better decisions with your money? Decisions that secure your future, protect your family, and bring you peace of mind. I'm Darren Jacobs, and I'm here to help you make sense of your dollars. Welcome to Dollars and Cents, the show that breaks down the financial world in ways that matter to you. No jargon, no confusion, just real conversations about money, your money. So join me every Wednesday at 10 a.m. on WESN for Dollars and Cents.
My name is Dr. Stephen Carroll, the CEO at Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist, and we are committed to making good private healthcare affordable.
For all your medical needs, including dental, radiology, laparoscopy, behavioral and mental health, along with many other services, contact us for more information at 235-5479.
Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
As always, we appreciate you starting your day with us. Let's get into this morning's first conversation.
Is the country's healthcare system more at risk more than ever?
Why it has remained unaddressed for so long.
Political parties get lots of cash, big cash from financiers, and then when they get that now, you can't account for it.
But it's really the specialist nurses who we are in a greater shortfall for.
We can tap into the resources and have them, at least form some mentorship programs.
Highlight our food systems, and which will attract persons from all over the world to come and experience something that actually supports the local economy.
We're lucky that we have a vibrant legal system that allows change to take place, and it's not that matters are just swept under the carpet and discrimination is allowed to be perpetrated.
A lot of people don't know that there were attempts to ban the carnival, suppress the carnival.
The best for your baby is at thebesttoys.com. From the best strollers, car seats, baby carriers, high chairs, booster seats, rockers, jumpers and bouncers, walkers, baby blankets, feeding accessories, bathtubs. Visit us in store at Forces Flagship McLean. Shop online now at thebesttoys.com. Order via call or WhatsApp at 332-BABY. And remember, we have the best toys at the best prices.
The home of Caribbean content is growing, and we welcome you to be a part of the #1 platform for young personalities who are driven to make a positive impact in society. As we continue to reach every corner of Trinidad and Tobago through our daily broadcasts, our social media pages, or through our 75+ digital billboards across the nation, contact us to learn about our competitive rates via marketing at wesncc.com or call us at 628-5835. WESN Content Capital, television with a difference.
Every day, we communicate through stories. Stories of ourselves, our challenges, our goals, our experiences, and our aspirations. Storytelling is an art that we have mastered. WESN Film Studios comprises a collaborative team of experts with extensive industry experience locally, regionally, and internationally. The ability of your business to successfully communicate with your preferred audience depends on the strength of the stories you tell. Your vision should be communicated in a high-quality, professional, and creative way. From concept to post-production, advertising to film, multi-camera productions, live events, streaming, and virtual conferencing. We are WESN Film Studio. Let your own unique voice be heard and your vision realized. Call us today at 628-5835 for your next production.
Our award-winning show is back, and this season promises to be even more exciting than before. What's Up, Doc isn't just a title, it's a call to action for anyone who wants to improve their health and well-being. Join us on this thrilling ride towards better health on WESN Content Capital.
This is 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson. The distance from where we should be in the world in going forward and our commitments with climate change.
The effects of climate change that cannot be accounted for, it's called loss and damage. And we're seeing loss and damage happening so much more in this decade and the previous decade.
The principal term there was this question of the correspondent banking issues.
That is why we're trying to build capacity with this country here, Trinidad and Tobago, and other countries in the region. Man is not showing any signs of stopping or even slowing down. More than half of the forest in Trinidad is already gone.
All the plants and all the animals and all of the nice clean water and fresh air and everything had to be on this planet for humanity to have a chance.
We have small change when it comes to countries that can take decisions, and when they speak, the world listens.
The General Assembly is a very democratic forum. And Trinidad and Tobago has the same vote as Canada, in spite of the obvious difference in size.
WESN.
And I am Jada McLeod. So today, we have a couple of,
to see, but
we're here with you guys now, and we're just going to kick off the show with, of course, a couple of updates for you before we head into our interview for the day. So Donald Trump, US President Donald Trump, he drew a little bit of criticism because he put out on social media an AI image of himself as the Pope. Take a look at this.
As Pope? Yeah. I'd like to be Pope. That would be my #1 choice. No, I don't know. I have no preference. I must say we have a cardinal that happens to be out of a place called New York who's very good. So we'll see what happens.
So when we say mixed reactions, I was a bit taken aback by that, because even if you remove the context of it being the Pope, someone's just died. Why would you make a post like that? Even if it was meant in good faith. So some of the reactions that we heard was from some cardinals, from some Catholics. They were saying that there's nothing clever or funny about this image. We just buried our beloved Pope Francis, and they're about to enter into a solemn conclave to introduce a new successor after Pope Francis. And also, what we know now is that when at the time Trump posted this, they were still in their period of mourning, 9 days of mourning. It's quite offensive.
It was very insensitive, but I think because Trump didn't create it, this was created by someone else, and Trump reposted it.
Why?
So it was. I think it may not have been meant to be insensitive, but of course it would come across that way because it's a little too soon. You know, you make a joke, Michael, it's too soon.
The Pope just died.
Yeah.
And I know, even if somebody else created it, for you as an elected official, you hold a high office, probably the highest office right now. Why do you think that it's appropriate to repost something that, honestly, any past would have caused so much diplomatic tension? No, honestly, no other president could have gotten away with that.
Very true.
So I just thought that it was an interesting watch, and the fact that people are still defending his actions in that way is unbelievable to me. We honestly, I don't understand that. What do you guys think? You can of course get engaged with us on WESNCC, on our Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram, WhatsApp even. You can find us there. The WhatsApp number is up on the screen. All right, so we're actually just going to move along to another update that we wanted you guys to see. So another update following Donald Trump. The Prime Minister of Canada sat down with Donald Trump a couple of days ago to discuss the comments he made about wanting to buy Canada or making Canada the 51st state. So he says to Trump, Canada is not for sale. Take a look at this.
With the owners of Canada over the course of the campaign last several months, it's not for sale, won't be for sale ever.
I think that there are tremendous benefits to the Canadian citizens, tremendously lower taxes, free military, which honestly we give you essentially anyway because we're protecting Canada if you ever had a problem. But I think it would really be a wonderful marriage because it's two places that get along very well. They like each other a lot.
Well, if I may, as you know from real estate, there are some places that are never for sale.
That's true.
We're sitting in one right now, Buckingham Palace, that you visited as well.
That's true.
And having met with the owners of Canada over the course of the campaign last several months, it's not for sale, won't be for sale ever. But the opportunity is in the partnership and what we can build together.
Canada is stepping up the military participation because Mark knew, they were low, and now they're stepping it up, and that's a very important thing. But never say never. Never say never.
Yes. Of course, Donald Trump is always making news. So, as you just saw there, Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, would have just sat with Donald Trump and they spoke about. And honestly, it's things that prime ministers and presidents shouldn't have to talk about. Why would you say that you want to buy another country, another powerful country, huge country, out from under, and take away their governance out from under them? And again, he was not chastised really in any way for that. That's something that you're supposed to. Mr. President, you're not supposed to say that. He's supposed to be corrected in private. He's supposed to be able to come out and say, I made a mistake. I'm sorry for saying that. Like you guys would probably think that I'm a bit too heavy in terms of criticism on Donald Trump. But every day he does something that makes me go, what? So I have to point it out. What did you think about the comments, Naomi?
I think I share the same thoughts as you do. Mm-hmm. Donald Trump definitely, him doing that or putting himself in that position to be seen in that light now is It is interesting. It's almost, I'm shocked, to say the least, because just say you want to take another country, it is a slap in the face to Canada, because it comes like, do you not think we can stand on our own?
They haven't been standing on their own.
Exactly. So it's like, why would you want, or why would you come thinking that we would submit to your request?
Or you would even want, okay, so you may have a better military, but it's because you put billions of dollars into your military.
Yeah.
So he would have emphasized that the opportunity is in the partnership to work with the U.S., which they've been doing for decades, and what they can build together. So it's not about one country being toppling over another, or making America so great that they topple over every other country. But no, it's about working together, coming together and saying, for the global market, this is how we can push forward global togetherness and community, and making sure that we all do well. So it's about togetherness, and I feel like I applaud Prime Minister Marconi, for making that the resolution of the discussion. So we are going to just take a short break, and when we come back, we will have our first interview of the day for you. It's a very exciting one, so stay with us.
My name is Dr. Joanne Williams-Carroll, and I am the Director of Behavioral and Mental Health at the Community Hospital. At the Community Hospital, we believe in nurturing mind, body, and soul. Through our counseling and chaplaincy program, we will provide you with support and strength you need to help with your mental and emotional well-being. Give us a call.
The Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
Fanzone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
Pastor J, I want to get a tattoo.
You really want to
Respond to me how you would respond to me.
The first question I'll ask is what?
Controversial taboo topics.
We get so consumed by church, we forget that we have to live the life of being a Christian outside of the Sunday.
Like you say,
services.
we think going to a service makes us a Christian.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right, so here we are about to hear the second time Pastor J wanted to take a tattoo.
Would have been late last year and early this year.
Oh gosh.
Hope Unfiltered podcast with Pastor J and Ren.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
This is Face of Sports, WESN Content Capital. How you felt about the kiss on the lip?
That's the business. I'm nothing to do with that.
I find that was distasteful.
The national senior team, whether you like it or not, that is the model for all other teams to follow.
I'm assuming that the regional requirement may be a much stricter requirement.
This is not about Pro League and Super League. This is a league run by the Normalization Committee that I'm responsible for.
Nobody expected FIFA to fund this arrangement.
If we don't get a professional attitude towards this, we are doomed for failure.
You break the balance, trip the leg, control the body.
They ain't gonna stand put forever.
Why you want the Chiefs to lose so? Why you want the Chiefs to lose so?
They already have two. Lamar don't
Why?
have.
You're jealous because you know the Chiefs getting closer to the Patriots. Let's go to the last part.
No,
of the
not
game.
no.
Let's go to the last part.
Welcome back to the program this morning. So we're jumping into our first conversation of the morning. We're talking Tobago. So Tobago's role in national development has come sharply into focus following the results of the 2025 general election, with a new administration led by Kamala Persad-Bissessar now in office. And the Tobago electorate have made a bold statement at the polls questions of autonomy, fiscal equity, and the future of tourism and investment on the island. Today we're joined by economist Dr. Vanessa James once again to dive deeper into the implications of this political shift, what it signals for Tobago's development, and the pressing economic choices now before the nation. Good morning, Dr. James.
Good morning.
Good morning. So just to start off the conversation, I wanted to understand from your own personal perspective, what does the word autonomy mean in the context of Tobago from Trinidad?
Well, not so much a personal perspective as a proper perspective in the context of the way the country works, the way the Constitution is currently designed, and the way the country's economy operates. What we have in Trinidad and Tobago is an authoritarian system of government in which cabinet runs the country without oversight. That's the current constitution, section 75(1). The whole constitution was written to give effect to that. Now, if you turn to the THA Act, there is a corresponding clause in the THA Act which gives the Executive Council complete control of the government in Tobago, again without oversight. And that means that you're making policy, which is typically bad policy. And the results of the bad policy are shown in the last 10 years on that. In fact, in the last 15 years, from Kamala's first reign to today, the economy has generally collapsed. 23% in the last 10 years because of bad policy choices. Now, in Tobago, the economy also collapsed 23% for the same reason. Bad policy choices, and sometimes even vindictive policy choices. Since 2022, for example, under FALI, the collapse that was in place from 2015 under Kelvin Childs and so on, continued. It never abated, and real incomes, real GDP per capita in both Tobago and Trinidad continued to fall. Now, in that context, you'll see that what is required for the country and for Tobago is a change in the system of government that allows popular participation in the policymaking and lawmaking process. That means, effectively, you have to introduce oversight. You have to have a big enough parliament to allow for oversight. Right now, it's too small to allow for that. And you have to have a big enough House of Assembly to also allow for oversight. Oversight means that the people of Tobago and the representatives of Tobago inside the THA will be able to make law to control the Executive Council. And it also means the same thing in Trinidad. The people of Trinidad and Tobago, the representatives we elect, will dominate the lawmaking process. Right now, law is made by the cabinet. But you really want a system in which the representatives of the people outside the cabinet can make the law and oversee the process of implementing the law by the cabinet. And you need the same thing in Tobago. Autonomy is essentially a process of putting that system in place. Anything else would mean that you're dependent on the central government policy making process in Trinidad to make policy in Tobago, to make law for Tobago. And you're depending purely on the wisdom of the Executive Council and the public service to make good policy and implement it. And neither of those we've seen happen since 1956. In fact, surely since independence. We've never seen government work properly because of that autocratic system of government. That is what you have to change, and autonomy means that change.
Yeah, would there be like a check or balance on the checks and the balance that you put in place? Because those people.
But that's what that check and balance in the American system means something different, a different design that they now have there, that they got there since Jefferson and Ben Franklin and those fellas. But in Trinidad and Tobago and in any Caribbean country, the notion of check and balance doesn't fit. What you need is, because we're working a parliamentary system with a cabinet running the government, the executive function, we are a committee of the parliament. What you need is the capacity of the non-cabinet members not in opposition to supervise and effectively oversee the workings of the cabinet. That's what check and balance would translate to, the idea behind it. But the phenomenon of check and balance is an American, and people just shoot it all over the place. But what you really need in Trinidad and Tobago is to set up the government in such a way that we, the people, can participate in the sharing and communication of information with our representatives, so they can make proper law, make sound policy to supervise. So let me not use the word supervise. Let me use the word oversee.
Oversee. Okay.
The work of the cabinet and of the executive council.
So that body will oversee the government, and the people will hold that body accountable.
Well, let me also clarify something else, and that is that in the current system of government that we're running, the intent of legislation is cabinet intent.
Yes.
It is not the intent of the representatives of the people as much as is the intent of cabinet. So even the judiciary is bound by that intent. When the judiciary goes to Hansard to find intent in legislation, ever since 1956, the intent that it has picked up is always going to be the intent of the cabinet. Now, in a serious system where the judiciary plays the role of an independent check, if you want to use that word, on the quality of justice, guarantee of the quality of justice and so on, it reads the intent of the representatives, especially the representatives who are not in the cabinet. That's the problem that we have to sort out from the point of view of the independence of the judiciary. But it's the same problem you have to sort out from the point of view of the capacity of the people to participate in what Kamala is talking about. When she says she wants to listen to you more, there is no mechanism in the government of Trinidad and Tobago today to allow her to listen to you.
Yes.
She wants to hear from you. There is no mechanism. So you've got to set up the government for that mechanism to exist. And the same is true in Tobago. Autonomy is a process of putting that system in place so that you can get all the things you want. Equality of status between Tobago and Trinidad, fair budgetary allocations, proper access to development opportunity. All those things come with a proper system of government.
So would you agree with the separation of the roles between as a minister in Parliament representing the people and having a cabinet portfolio? I think Mr. Augustine was talking about that. The reason why the people who went up for Tobago, East and West, didn't get chosen to be a part of the cabinet, or they didn't choose to be a part of the cabinet.
Well, it's futile what Mr. Augustine is talking about, because the system, the structures that you have don't allow for really any independent influence of people outside of the cabinet on how the government functions and how law is made. Because if you're in the cabinet, you have to obey the prime minister. And if you're outside of the cabinet, you have no influence. Section 75(1) of the Constitution says you obey the prime minister effectively. The cabinet makes the law, runs the country, collectively responsible to the parliament, but there's no mechanism for the responsibility. So that's essentially saying cabinet runs the country. Now, in that context, you're outside the cabinet, then you're two Tobago reps outside the cabinet. The only thing you can do is educate the cabinet, and you have to send reps to Port of Spain with the technical and intellectual capability and the political muscle to teach the cabinet something. That would be what has to be done. That would be what is normally done if you set up the government properly. So they're going to be trying to play a role of educator of the cabinet without the tools to do it, without the politics to do it, and with numbers that do not make that effective. And Mr. Fally has found himself in that position with Dr. Rowley. The laws of Trinidad and Tobago gave him room to teach Dr. Rowley something, and he didn't have the tools to do that, or the capacity, guys.
Okay, I understand that. So you mentioned before that the proposed autonomy bills fall short of granting true self-determination to Tobago. So what key elements are missing inside of that, and how should they be addressed to meet the island's desires or aspirations?
Well, the bills that are in the parliament today are nothing short of a massive joke about good governance in the country and good governance in Tobago. You cannot give Tobago autonomy without a proper structure of government in Trinidad.
Yes.
So the whole constitution has to be reformed. That's the first thing about those bills in parliament. They do not contemplate proper constitutional reform for the country as a whole. Now remember, cabinet runs the country under section 75(1), and every law is written to give effect to that. So if you want to have, let me think of it this way for you. Suppose you wanted to have fair access to development opportunity for Tobago. You would need to reform the Senate. You have to make the Senate an elected Senate. It cannot be an appointed Senate because you need a Senate that could provide equality of status and equality of access to opportunity for Tobago. And what that would really mean in the end is that you will have senators who are so empowered by both being elected and by the numbers that you put in place, the relative numbers, that and the responsibilities, that they will be able to define the range around which fair budgetary allocations can be delivered for development purposes. Right now, you don't have anything like that. So, and for you to get something like that, you also need proper boundaries for Tobago, for example. So the overall, really the summary answer you can't escape from is that you have to enlarge the parliament in Trinidad. You've got to have a parliament somewhere like 95 members, and you keep the cabinet to 12 members or something like that. That's the starting point for the country. And you have to elect the national Senate. Some of those senators will come from Tobago, and you have to ensure that decision-making thresholds in the Senate are very high, like 80%, that sort of stuff. You'll need that. And then you have to set up the THA exactly the same way, with a corresponding Tobago Senate inside Tobago. And you have to bring the communities into the conversation. They have to be recognized, defined, and have their own autonomy, effectively, have their own capacity for self-determination. So they could be the anchor for the entrepreneurial activities of the state, as we've seen with Petrotrin, with the spelling Tobago and so on. The state is the worst possible place you could look to for good entrepreneurial money-making activity. So what you have to do is get out of that and let the communities be the entrepreneurs. They will have motive and skill enough to set up business, to make money, and that's the way you'll be able to transform the economy. So when you talk about all of this, everything anchors on the proper structure for the government to allow for everything else that you want. And without a proper structure, nothing will work. And we'll be here for 1,000 years looking for development and diversification if we keep going down the road we're going now.
I hear you on that. Is it that, do you think that there's an argument at all that there will be, as you said, 95 in terms of the numbers, that there'll be too many peppers in the pot, too many voices contributing to the conversation, that it will just slow progress down or efficiency down?
Not true. That's not true, because they'll go to parliament for different reasons. You'll have 15 say members of the House who can be in the cabinet. No more. Right. So the rest are making law. Lawmaking is a serious representative responsibility. So you'll have, say, 80 persons in the House, but the majority of them would be on the winning side of the cabinet. And that majority, if you look in Westminster today in Britain, it's 650 representatives. The cabinet is about 30. So the end result is you have enough winning side members to look at what the cabinet is doing and say when you're doing a good job and when you're not doing a good job on your own side of the cabinet. You're able to do that. Yeah, that's why in the last 3 years we saw the winning side of the Conservative Party was able to move 3 prime ministers effectively. And remember, our legislation allows you to use a vote of no confidence to remove the prime minister. It's never happened here because of the numbers. But if you had a Westminster system, which we don't have here, then you would be able to remove an incompetent prime minister. We would have been able to remove Rowley from the cabinet and the parliament long ago if we had that kind of design and get the country off this path of continuous decline that we're on. The same is required today. You have to set up the government with the numbers to allow for operation of an oversight system. And let me remind you, for real autonomy in Tobago, it's the same thing. You have 19 members in the THA today. 15 of them really are in the executive council. There can be no oversight from the other 4. You need enough members outside of the executive council to oversee the executive council. That's kind of like a board of directors. And the end result would be that the public will be able to participate. You'll be able to call in the oversight process. You'll need 6 or 7 oversight committees for the various ministries. And then they'll be able to call in the public, hear whistleblowers, understand, and take the time to do that sort of stuff because they're not tied up with executive work. And the end result will be you'll get good law that allows the economic process to work properly. So numbers, the country can't be penny wise and pound foolish when it comes to the story of good governance. We've got to work out the numbers, put the numbers in place, and that's the money that will yield fruit. What we're doing now with the cabinet, you have 41 members in the parliament today, all wasting time. And you see the result of that in the collapse of the economy and the mismanagement. They're not wicked when they're mismanaging. They're uninformed. That's the main thing. Democracy runs on information, just like a car runs on fuel. And if you do not have full information flow, you're likely to make mistakes all the time. And that's what's been happening to Trinidad and Tobago for 69 years.
Do you think there's any merit in saying that Tobago just does not receive enough of the budgetary allocation to be able to not just survive, but thrive in the way Trinidad has, in a way?
There is no merit to that statement when it comes to the recurrent budget because we fixed that problem with the Dispute Resolution Commission. We made the law to say, and I was a member of that commission, we made the law to say that Tobago gets a share of the recurrent budget exactly equal to the share of its population. And so what we have to do is monitor the population share and keep that up. Fali and his team didn't bother with that, but that's what you have to do. You have to keep monitoring the population of the country, the population of Tobago, calculate the share and keep up to date with that. That's what the dispute resolution report made clear. On the development budget, it's a different matter because development depends not only on the population, but also the space of responsibility you have. Now, if you define properly what we call Tobago and what we call Trinidad, you will recognize that you need to use the median line between Tobago and Trinidad. Anything south of the median line is Trinidad, and anything north of the median line is Tobago. And then you'll define the development budget proportional to both the population share and the spatial share. And it is only in that sense you could have a meaningful idea of a fair share of the budget going to Tobago. but it's the fair share of the development budget. So there is no deficiency other than with respect to the development budget. And the only real reason for that is we don't have a proper constitution to define the islands properly, fairly, and in terms of natural rights. Everybody in Trinidad knows that when you're around inside the Bocas and those places, you're in Trinidad. But once you get north up to Barbados, you're really in Tobago. So you have to use that natural right. Midway point coming up. And after that, once you cross that, you say, well, I'm in Tobago. And not every day you take the area. That would give Tobago somewhere about 32%. This is the country. This is not Tobago as such. This is the country setting up itself for development. And you say, okay, the whole blue economy north of the median line is the responsibility of the Tobago Parliament to pursue development with. And then you allocate the budget in relation to that fact. That is where fairness would come from. Tobago is not being treated unfairly with the 4.03% or maybe 4.5% now with the population share and so on, on the recurrent budget side. But it is being treated, the country is treating itself wholly inadequate on the development side because it is underfunding the pursuit of real diversification through the potential of Tobago. That's not because Trinidad and Tobagonians are wicked against Tobago. That's because of incompetence in understanding what it really means to allocate a budget to pursue development opportunity. We wouldn't be talking about Tobago's share of oil and gas. That is nonsense really for the country to ponder on. There is no Tobago share of oil and gas that makes sense because you want to build a viable tourism economy in Tobago. You can't put oil and gas industries in Tobago. That's those dirty industries. We have them down in Port Lisas already. Let them stay there. What you're talking about is a fair share of the budget. Forget about the oil and gas. Send all the oil and gas support to Spainers now. And let's talk about a fair share of the budgetary proceeds from use of those resources. But it won't then be only oil and gas. What will happen is that you have a blue economy outside of the island of Tobago in the narrow land space. You will have opportunities for yachting, sea sports of all kinds, fishing, grand fish industry in Tobago really, pretty big. You will have opportunities for all of those things that you have to exploit. And you'll need a Senate that can study the allocations around what constitutes a fair formula and allocate and adjust according to performance. And a small adjustment, 5% deviation from the formula set up in the Constitution and so on. But you need a properly elected Senate to do those kinds of things. So what we really need as a country is to organize ourselves properly around the science to allow us to make progress. This government, the one in Tobago and the one in Trinidad today, the new one, is really not apprised properly of these issues. And they will go down the road of another wasted 5 years just because they don't understand the fundamentals of constitutional reform that we need to put in place quickly in order to deal with all of these challenges. Just to make the point to you, take the case of the current budgetary challenge that Pamela's government will face.
Yeah.
You can't fix that challenge with the current constitutional framework we're working with. So they'll bungle along just like the PNM did. Remember when Rowley came in, Cominbert used to cuss Kamala every day around bad budgetary policy and so on. Well, for 10 years, they made the same mistake.
Yeah.
So it's not Kamala, it's not Rowley, it's not Cominbert. It's the system that we're running.
So I was wondering where the money would come from if you're removing the tax on income and tax on property and tax on gas. Where would the money come from?
Exactly right. Where will it come from? And ultimately what it means if you have a huge budget gap, ultimately you finance it by borrowing. Now the real question becomes, who borrows? Should the national government borrow? Should the THA borrow? Or should the communities borrow? Well, you have to set up your government to have that kind of flexibility. The more centers of borrowing you have, the more scope you have for not only properly funding the budget, but also using the money wisely. As it is now, you're not going to have any scope because it's not sufficient to have the central government or even the central government and the THA borrow to deal with the kind of problems that we're trying to tackle here, especially the failure to diversify the economy.
So, Dr. Van James, I just wanted to ask about the Foreign Investment Act, because I know this is something that comes up when speaking about Tobago's autonomy. And recently, the Tobago Business Chamber would have called for repeal of this act. Do you believe that this is, stifling Tobago's development and investment, which would, then lead to better autonomy in Tobago?
Well, there's a lot of hand waving in those kinds of declarations. Everybody says the Foreign Investment Act is a barrier, and it is, but it is not a barrier in any simple sense. What is needed is a proper law and underlying program to attract foreign investment into the economy outside of oil and gas. All our foreign investment comes into either of two places, oil and gas or to help manage the hotel plant. Mm-hmm. That can't work if you're talking diversification and development. So you need to design a program that pushes you down a different road, and we know what that road should be. And then you write a foreign investment, you develop a foreign investment attraction program around that. Let me just give you a little tiny bit of technicality. The real issue for the is that we're not specializing in accordance with our comparative advantage, things we can do best. If you compare what we could do in government or in agriculture with what our medical doctors could do, or engineers or lawyers could do, you would see that our comparative advantage is not simply in oil and gas, but also in education for export and healthcare for export and high-powered creative industries like what Michelle Montano and those fellas are doing, and so on. But we do not pursue that to advantage. And the historical evidence of the Trinidad and Tobago demonstrates that very low elasticities in all our industrial effects on development. Now, if you want to sort out that, you have to put a foreign investment program in place. You have to shift towards the appropriate comparative advantage. And then that's the basis on which you will need foreign capital to flow. The profits that will come from those new activities you're talking about is what would attract the foreign investment, just like the high profits in oil and gas study attracts foreign investment. Now, if you did it that, what it would mean is you will have to cook up different approaches to attracting foreign investment to simply saying we have oil. And it is that complexity. It goes to creation of safe, healthy, happy communities. That will be a magnet for foreign investment. It goes to creating entrepreneurial development programs that would allow foreigners to come and enjoy the benefits of local incubators and local accelerators through which they could bring their startups to success, to maturity. Those kinds of things are, if you look in Malta as an economy, you see them doing that. That's the kind of thing that you have to be talking about. And the foreign investment required to come in on that basis will need to come in with access to citizenship and citizenship for the workers, the high-powered workers, and so on. The benefits of that approach has to be acknowledged in legislation. And so it's not just about preventing people from owning land, because your real challenge is to attract high-powered skills, high research quality skills that could innovate on your land space inside your jurisdiction, and so on. It's those kinds of things you have to be talking about if you want to talk seriously about foreign investment attraction. So it's not just to deal with people getting access to property, because you need to let people get access to property. You just have to define appropriately what that means. You see it being done properly in St. Kitts, for example, where the wealthy can come into St. Kitts, become citizens, and buy $405 million US property. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that.
And any country gets the foreign exchange.
You can't attract the investors to do it.
Is it because of the crime situation or any other social issues? Is that a major factor?
Well, if you set up the government properly, the communities will help you to grapple with crime. Safe, healthy, happy community is a community that is capable of putting security arrangements in place to protect its investments. Right now, all communities have their hands tied behind their back. They're not empowered. They're not even recognized properly. So that you can't deal with crime. So you have a central government trying to resolve the problem of crime. Same like you see it in Jamaica. It never worked. It cannot work because the information flow required to treat with crime on the prevention side and on the crime solution side all fundamentally comes from inside the community. It's the community that knows you when you're a child growing up, sees your tendencies, and will understand what kind of deviance prevention mechanisms to put in place to prevent the evolution of a criminal person. And it's the community that knows the criminals.
Yeah.
And they lack the power to intervene, to use to even share the information they have. There is no parliamentary system through which I live in the back of Mason Hall and I would see things, and I do not have a way to go and share that information with the THA, far less the central government. It's crazy what we do.
So what would be some appropriate alternative models to investment in the land and Tobago itself?
Well, first you have to understand what I'm talking about there, as I said, and you're taking steps to shift towards the optimal parts of your comparative advantage spectrum. So you want to bring people in, for example, to help you to build a university system that could export education. Tobago will be a natural place for that, just like you see it going on in St. Kitts, where they have 4 university consortia, including the UWI consortium, through which you are able to attract foreigners. And nowadays it would be a great investment to have, won't it? Because Donald Trump is trying to tell high-powered graduate students, don't come to America. So where will they go? So we could open doors. St. Kitts has opened the door, and they're going to go there. And that's one direction for the investment package that you want. And you append to that all the other things I was just talking about with the entrepreneurial development system. That would be a nice package for Tobago space. But it means you have to put together an export-oriented University of Tobago, not UTT, not UWI. That sort of stuff is what you're talking about. Then if you want to look elsewhere, you could look at what we've been doing in the Bahamas with financial services. But Manning had it in mind back after 2010, but he didn't know how to do it. Yet it was a decent idea, but he didn't have the skill or the system of government to get it done properly. So it ultimately just lay there as an idea. But you could go down that road. Bahamas has made a success of it, and they've been able to double their GDP per capita from about 14 to 31 now, over 25 years. It doesn't take forever to get it done. Financial services is where they went, and that's what made Cayman and Bermuda the successes they are. Their GDP per capita is $20,000 US dollars higher than the Americans, and $37,000 in the case of the Bahamas, of Bermuda. So we know how to do these things as economists. We have the data in front of us. We're studying the world every day, and we know that that's the direction in which you have to go. Now, we have a huge potential that I make my living in WIPO, promoting in the world system. We work with countries up and down the world. I am currently working with the WIPO on the economy of Philippines, and what you see is a lot of evidence that the creative industries is a huge pool of potential for the kind of investments you want to talk about. And those industries can only really work well if we talk about the decision-making processes that I am describing here for you. So you could go down the road of the creative industries, but for you to do that, here's what you have to pay attention. You have to know every region of the country properly. You have to know where the potential is in every part, every community. If you go in the Bakasip area, you find a lot of musicians. I wouldn't even use ethnic definitions for it. Just musicians, fantastic, quote-unquote, Indian musicians that bred soca together with Rashoti and his friends from the Indian community. That sort of stuff requires information all across the country, every corner. We don't know that kind of information. Constitution for Trinidad and Tobago today. So we know about Machel and we know about Preacher and so on as individuals, but you've got to look in the communities where you can nurture talent and know what's going on there, what's possible there. Every time I go to a funeral in Tobago, I am mesmerized by this. Every funeral in Tobago is a concert. And you're mesmerized by the underutilized talents. So that's a huge potential. And it's not just music. It's the street theater we call Canada. You could take that up into film and video games and all kinds of other things. The potential is rich, but we're so organized as to limit our capacity to exploit that potential. So instead of talking about the Foreign Investment Act, what I would tell the Chamber is step one, set up the government properly. And then we will determine, because of the information flow, which acts to act on and take action on very quickly. But that's the sense in which you have to understand the investment path that the country has to walk.
So you sort of just went in and answered my last question there. But the reason why this is not happening, or the reason why we aren't doing these things, is it because you think right now this is how the system is set up, it's beneficial for the leaders in charge? That's the reason why they're not making these changes?
No, I think it's incompetence. I've watched it for years. I've watched it under Eric Williams. When CLR James raised these issues with Eric Williams, he put CLR James, Eric Williams put CLR James under house arrest. There's a taste and an intoxication with power that the political class seems to have. I'm not sure if you grew up in an authoritarian society, you learn authoritarianism, and maybe it's just the habits of authoritarianism. But in any case, you see that. After Eric Williams was kicked out and we defeated the PNM in 1986, we put Robinson in power. He displayed exactly the same authoritarian behavior. And he said, I heard him myself in meetings with him say, you can't eat constitution. Right? After he almost lost his life and we had to turn over the government in the end to Manning.
Yes.
Manning went down the same road. Kamala took over from Manning and essentially went down the same road, although she tried to do constitutional reform. She couldn't do it because of ignorance. It's the same problem. They don't know they are authoritarians and they don't understand what you're talking about. That's it.
Okay, but the information is out there. So people like you are out there. They can hire you guys as personal, what I'm looking for, like some sort of hired help. People that
it can't be about hiring. It's the system you have to set up. Everybody, you, me, everybody, every citizen must have access to sharing the information they have. If you put a coalition of the willing in that sense, not a coalition of interest, but a coalition of the willing, in which everybody who wants to participate has open, equal access to the parliament, to share and communicate. Communicate means explain the information you have. Then what you will have is a government that can make proper decisions. So it's not that you must hire high-powered skills. All skills must have access, local and foreign too.
But making the first steps towards saying, okay, well, we are living in a system where it's unfair to the people right now, we need to include them more. Why, in terms of making those first steps, they're not doing that? And you're saying it's because of ignorance, but it's not that they don't have the information.
Well, look, when Rowley said last year, January 24, he wanted to do constitutional reform, that was the right answer. But how did he go about it? He operated under the edict that cabinet runs the country. So he and the cabinet set up the committee, left out Kamala, left out the judiciary, effectively, and just went forward with what looked like a competent committee, which turned out to be incompetent, not because they're not academically brilliant, but because they're underinformed and because the underlying parliamentary process doesn't force real consideration of the issues. That's what you have. So what Kamala has to do now is not pick Prakash Ramadar to go and do constitutional reform under a Prakash Ramadar committee or something like that. You have to set up a committee of the government. There's a government of Trinidad and Tobago in place today. You have the opposition is part of it. The governing party is part of it. You have the judiciary is part of it. And you have a president who may have an opinion. You have a Senate And you have to pull from all of those spaces and set up a committee of the parliament, of the government, effectively.
Okay.
Including having Ibachi say if he could spare you a judge to help. And then that must be operating as a parliamentary committee, not a joint select committee, a committee of the government of Trinidad and Tobago that could sit and do the hearings and call in everybody who wants to participate to share what they know.
Right.
And they'll hear all the things I have to say and anybody else has to say. And then their job is to turn that into legislation. That's the task. But it has to be done that way. If it's done as a cabinet dictatorship, it won't get you anything. And every time we've tried to do it, from Eric Williams to today, it's been done as a cabinet dictatorship. And it has never worked for that reason.
Yeah, I mean, thanks so much for that. We do have to wrap. I think that's a good place to end. It feels like we always end in that place where nothing is done, but we're saying what needs to be done. But I thank you, of course, for coming on, and I know it's quite early. Yes, of course. I do hope that you have a beautiful day.
You too.
Thanks
Take
so
care.
much, Doctor.
Bye-bye.
All right, so we're just going to take a quick break.
Before we take a break, we have Wild Wednesday today. We're going to show that just now, but with reference to what we spoke about earlier with President Trump. With President Trump posting that AI picture of himself dressed as the Pope. We got a comment from Rishi Ramdani from Digicel, and he said, that's making a mockery of the faith, of people's faith. And I find that politicians should not make fun of other people's religion. Don't you think so?
I would completely agree, Rishi. Yeah. I completely agree with you. It's people do it. Regular citizens, people do it, right? People make fun of other people's religions every single day. But when you're holding high office like that, it is your responsibility to be diplomatic. It is your responsibility to be so attuned to the different religions, the different sensitivities, the different personal things to people.
Set an example. I mean, you are of highest influence at this point, so...
You are macro influencer.
Yeah.
You have your own social media platform. You cannot be doing that. So I would completely agree with you, Rishi.
Yeah.
So yes, Wild Wednesday is up next.
So we're going to take a quick break, and when you come back, Wild Wednesday.
My name is Dr. Stephen Carroll, the CEO at Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist, and we are committed to making good private health care affordable.
For all your medical needs, including dental, radiology, laparoscopy, behavioral and mental health, along with many other services, contact us for more information at 235-5479.
Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
Our award-winning show is back, and this season promises to be even more exciting than before. What's Up, Doc isn't just a title, it's a call to action for anyone who wants to improve their health and well-being. Join us on this thrilling ride towards better health on WESN Content Capital.
And welcome back to AM Prime. It's Wednesday, so Wild Wednesday. Our viewers know exactly what's happening this morning. We have Mr. Ricardo Mead joining us on the program today for Wild Wednesday. Mr. Mead, welcome.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you to all our listeners, viewers, followers, supporters out there. And not because it's after Carnival, you have to be so Lantern. You know, you can still get a little wild. It's Wild Wednesday. Let's get a little excited. Let's get some blood pumping here. Let's, you know, I got breakfast. I brought breakfast for the ladies. Yeah.
No, thank you. I'm fasting.
Fasting.
You're fasting?
I'm dieting.
No, but this is vegetarian.
I'm dieting.
So, Mr. Mead, straight into it. What animal do we have with us this morning?
Well, we have two animals. We have lots in here, and then we have another animal in the little secret box over there. But let's deal with these lovely critters right here. So I'm just going to literally put it out there. Okay. Right. Okay. All right. I'll take them back. These are super worms. You know, you have regular worms in the world, and then you have super worms. You know, like you have regular people, and then you have super people like Superman. These are super worms. They're much bigger than the mealworms, and these are very important. This is something that people do not understand. Is that we need these in our lives. Okay. They are very high in protein, and you've heard the saying: the early bird catches the worm. Right. You know how hard it is to get up 4 o'clock in the morning to catch enough worms? So instead of doing that, we produce literally millions of these every year because we do wildlife rehabilitation. And at any moment, notice my phone could go off and somebody can say, "Hi, good morning. I got your number on Google. I just found a kiss kitty in my backyard. It seems to be a little baby that fell from the nest. Oh, I don't know where it came from." So one of the most appropriate food would be the worms. So am I going to go now in my backyard and dig for worms? Literally a kiss kitty who could eat about 100, 150 a day? No, so we have to be prepared. And sometimes now it's baby season. We don't really have an official baby season in Trinidad, but at this time of the year, lots of animals are producing young, lots of birds. So you have kiss kitties, cornbirds, cacique, mockingbirds, tanagers. We can have in one time 20-something birds that needs worms.
So when you say produce worms, what do you mean by that? It sounds like you're creating these worms in a lab.
Correct. We have a factory.
Okay.
At home, because I have it at home because the amount of care that it needs and the time that it needs the care. We have a factory. We have colonies, probably about 25 colonies with their parents. Their parents are beetles, actually. The truth is, these aren't actually worms. These are caterpillars. Or larvae. So they're not worms. Worms are worms. They're born worms, they grow worms, they stay worms. These are larvae. So you know the stages of an insect, right? Egg. You all right over there? Would you like to try one of these? They're actually cuddly, right? So yeah, it has 6 legs, just like the cat. They are caterpillars, right? So egg, larva, then pupa, and then adult. The adult is a beetle. So we use the adult, the beetles, we put them together, they do their thing, they lay thousands of eggs, they hatch, we feed them a variety of food, wheat bran, dog chow, carrots, lettuce. They eat great. They eat, that's why they taste so good. You sure you don't want to try one?
I'm so
good.
Would you be trying one today?
I think I'll have to consult with management. I don't have a problem with these. I consult, you know, but we have to make sure that it is appropriate for a viewing audience out there. You know, we don't want to traumatize anyone, you know, but if anyone does want to try a super worm, you know, we do have them and we do sell them. We have lots of them. Okay, so we produce them literally by the millions each year to be able to facilitate so many animals without realizing insectivores, or insects comprise a part of their diet. From our anteater friends that eat hundreds per day, even squirrels, crab-eating raccoons, a lot of the birds, the egrets, and all those birds you see. There's so many animals that depend on insects. It's an important part of our ecosystem, whether we like it or not. It's just a part of it, and it's a part of that food chain. And they also break down so many things. The amazing thing about these creatures, I try to always put them in a metal container because they can, you ready for this? Eat plastic.
Wow, yeah.
Plastic. And break it down to be safe. Also styrofoam.
Right.
So put that in context. We have a problem with plastics and styrofoam. If we produce enough of these, we may have a way of ridding them. Else we wait for 500 years till Mother Nature takes care of it naturally. So there's so much potential. So it's what you're seeing is not just a worm. It's possibly our future.
How big can these, I mean, their parents are beetles.
Yeah.
So are they gonna, I mean, they would eventually turn into a beetle?
Yeah, they'll pupate just the same way a caterpillar pupates, you know, and then it metamorphosizes.
How long do they stay in at that stage?
It depends on their diet.
Okay.
So if there's a lot of food available, they will continue eating and growing to the biggest that they can grow. But if there is a shortage of food or water, they would literally accelerate the rate at which they will go into the chrysalis or pupa stage and then turn into an adult. So it's basically saying, look, I'm not going to survive much longer in this stage. I need to change and fly away.
Right. And it's pretty smart on the insects.
It's about survival. Remember, these guys have been around long before us, and they've proven that long after we're gone, these guys are going to be still there jamming. So who's the smart ones here?
Them. See, the way you're holding them is very interesting. It's almost, you're just picking them up. They're just going about their daily working.
Remember, these are my babies. You know, I reproduce these. I live with these guys, you know.
You're just holding them.
Yeah. Would you like to try?
Find out from our guys behind the scene, is it okay for Mr. Mead to eat one of these worms?
What we do it in another episode when we're dealing with these specifically, and that way we'll have people literally tuned in to see the consumption of mealworms and superworms.
Okay.
Right? We'll do that. We'll make that, you know, we don't want anybody to really miss out on the opportunity. So we will say, you know, this is going to happen. Because also, what many people don't realize, within the next 10 years, a greater percentage of our human diet is going to be insects. It's already expanding. And the reason for this is that these are higher protein than any of our normal protein sources. So it's more meat than meat, as you can say. And to produce it is extremely sustainable. So the stuff that you would throw away, your cabbage, your lettuce, your potato peels, they would consume that and you get good meat. As opposed to right now, the ratio of food to get a pound of protein is extremely high. And that's unsustainable, while this is sustainable.
I mean, but how bad does it have to get for us to...
laughing at you.
I don't think I could have fathomed even, I could barely look at what's in the tin. I cannot open my mouth and put that in and chew. And
all I have to say with regards to that is that, have you ever had sushi?
Yes.
15 years ago, that was an impossible concept in Trinidad because that's raw fish and octopus and eel and squid. Oh, we can't eat that. Now, KFC has taken a back seat and the way to a girl's heart is sushi.
It's the way to my heart. I'll give that.
So she wouldn't eat these, but give her a piece of raw squid and she is there for you.
I mean, if you cook that, because I assume you can cook it.
Yes.
Yeah. Maybe, but not while it's...
This fry dry or this with as a jira, as cutters, has to be amazing. I mean, I like my food as raw and natural as possible, but you know, jira makes everything better.
Sure, it does make everything better. You're gonna need to char that for me to eat it, though.
Any way you want it. You grill them on both sides with a nice sauce, you know. Put it on the side with some nice fava beans, you know, lovely.
So there's our friend, our guys behind the scene, he said we could put it in a burger patty. And
yes.
That's double the protein, because a burger patty already has so much protein.
Yeah, this is amazing stuff, and it's the future, because now you can do it sustainable. That is going to be the key word. It's not just a word to be bandied about. Where we're going right now, especially with beef production, beef is probably the most unsustainable source of protein that there is, and its products associated with. And many people are moving away from that. The amount of water it takes to produce that, the amount of space, the amount of forest to be cleared, it's just not sustainable. We can't continue at that rate. Whereas this year, everybody in their home, you're like, Mom, what's for dinner tonight?
I think, though, that's why, I mean, people tend to look at plant-based protein more now. Plant-based protein has become extremely popular in terms of protein intake. I don't know. This, I mean, is considered meat protein, but I don't think we have gotten to that point yet. That's a bit extreme. To me, that seems a bit extreme.
Just remember this day, remember this interview. You know, you're still young. And the day you walk into a restaurant and you see on the right side, a full listing of non-traditional protein sources. You remember this crazy guy named Mr. Mead came in here and he spoke about that. And here we are, this fancy restaurant, and that is what they're offering.
Oh. Okay, I think we should move on to our friend in the box. The box. But I wanted to ask, does our friend in the box eat these worms?
Yes, well, our friend in the box came in as a patient 2 days ago, and he has to be with me literally, right, so he goes everywhere I go. Yes, we do. Yeah. Right, so we're bonding, and I'm trying to get him to eat these worms. Okay. He is, let me get him out. Here's our national colors. You ready, buddy? Let's come on out. Ladies, see you, and everybody out there to see you. Ladies and gentlemen, I've just called him Woody. He's red, he's black, and he's white. He is a lineated woodpecker.
He's very patriotic.
Yes. Your foot hooked in the paper there?
Adorable.
Right. And he's just a juvenile, a pre-fledgling. I guess he was not really ready to come out of his nest, his cavity. They don't actually live in traditional nests. They're cavity dwellers. That means a hole somewhere in a tree. That's where you'll find them.
Yes.
And they're a pioneer species. What that means is that they go first and so many others follow. So you have a nice coconut tree in the backyard. You've had it for years as a young person, and then the palm beetle struck it and it died. Do not cut it down. What will happen is that this guy will come in and start making holes, searching for grubs and bugs, as woodpeckers do. You know, long time we had a lot more wooden TNTech poles, utility poles, and they would go, you know, I remember in Tobago, they would drive me nuts, knocking in a pole very close to our house, just tuck, 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 tuck.
And that knocking is them looking for food.
Correct. So in that palm tree, you would have lots of beetles and worms like this, because the palm beetle's larva looks literally like this. Okay, you want to try today? He's like, no, I want to be spoon-fed. He's still at that stage. And so he would make a hole first for food, and then they would expand that hole for a nesting cavity. So the first animal to nest in that dead coconut tree or palm tree would be the woodpecker. After 6 or 8 weeks, they fledge and they move on. Then a parrot comes by. Hey, look at this nice, cool hole. He would use that now to nest. Then after 2 months, they would move on with their offspring. Then comes a tropical screech owl. They would use that also, and then they would move on. Then a toucan comes, uses it also, and moves on. So in a year, and it goes on until it gets to the stage of macaws. What the macaws would do is they expand the hole so that their big bodies can fit in there and their tails and stuff like that. But what he started as the pioneer species, at least 6 other species of animals would have used that as their nesting area or nesting cavity over the course of many years. And that coconut tree, if not cut or burnt, would go down slowly. So it can last as long as 10, probably even 15 years nesting. So 6 species over 15 years, see how many babies would have been produced. That is why these guys are key. They started. The other animals can't do that. He starts it. That's how important he is, based on his activity.
Yeah.
True pioneer.
Yeah.
I like that.
So what is, I mean, how does he, I know his beak is very important to his lifestyle. What are some of the other uses, apart from pecking at the tree? Do they use the beak as well for defense against other animals, to protect themselves?
Well, they can, but their main thing would be literally to get away.
Right.
Okay, so I've seen a video where they tried to go to a hole and there was a snake in there. And they just, you know, took off. He wasn't going to stand there and batter the snake to death. He took off, he flew away. And science is still trying to understand this bird. This bird can knock its beak attached to its head and its little body into wood at a tremendous velocity and with tremendous power. How can it do that and not basically shatter its little brain?
Exactly.
And physically hurt himself? It's just amazing. So somewhere in there, they're still trying to understand the way its body absorbs that shock. Right? So just imagine just punch into a wall. You're going to feel it. So imagine him, and not only does he just hit into the wood, he literally shreds it to make a hole. And if you know these old utility poles, they're very, very hard. A coconut tree getting into it's a little easier, but they get in. So how does that do that repeatedly like that and not harm their brain? Their spine, it's just amazing. So they're still studying. There are many theories about the tongue wrapping around, creating a sort of cushioning effect. Nobody's exactly sure yet. But one day it will be figured out. And then maybe that can be applied now. There's something called biomimicry, where our engineering science mimics or imitates things that they've seen in the natural world. So airplanes use birds' features to create less drag, faster speeds, less noise to make you more comfortable. Biomimicry, they mimic what the animals do with our physical environment. They use the physics that way. So when they figure out how he can really absorb those blows, imagine how that sort of technology being used in a car.
Yes.
Where you can get in an accident and you can literally walk out of it instead of your body being slammed and crushed and maimed inside. So there's so much that can be learned with regards to wildlife and what we can do with that knowledge. But we have to acquire it. And if we destroy it, we're not going to get that opportunity at all.
Of course. How many different species of woodpecker are there? And how many are from here in Trinidad and Tobago?
I believe we have about 5.
Right.
We normally encounter 2, this one and the olive. There's an olive woodpecker. We normally encounter about 2 of them, but I believe there are about 5 of them. Some of them are a little more rare. And there's some birds that are sort of imitation sort of woodpeckers, the wood creepers, they sort of hop along the tree the same way. So this bird is quite comfortable this way.
Right. Okay.
Because that's how he'd be on a tree.
Yes.
Right? So his legs are sort of oriented that way. You put him to walk and so on like that, it's going to be a whole different kettle of fish. They really can't walk. It's just like hummingbirds. Hummingbirds can't walk. He kind of hops around and he just uses his wings, but hummingbirds don't have ankles and knees. They have little straight legs. So they hover. And I guess that's, you can say, okay, he can't walk, so he's disabled. Oh no, a hummingbird is definitely differently able. So I can't use my feet. What do? They use their wings. The only bird that can reverse. They can reverse upside down. They can fly in any direction that they want and any orientation they want. And that is just absolutely amazing.
Yeah. So when how his head just is able to turn almost 360.
Yeah, they're powerful that way. That's them trying to spot for predators and so on. And then also, let me teach you guys a little something here. If your eyes are in front, you're a predator. All right? So anytime you're thinking about going fully vegan, stand in front of the mirror, look where your eyes are and say, oh, I'm a predator.
That's very interesting.
If the eyes are on the side, you're usually a prey.
Yeah.
Because you have to literally have better vision to spot for. The only spot that they won't see is a little, about 30 degrees right behind their head. So when now, that's to sort of even it out. So a predator, say an owl is going after this bird, the owl's eyes are in front. Predator, he has to focus, he has to see, he has binocular vision. He has 320 vision. Okay, so it's just that small space, 40 degrees that he can't see. For the owl to be successful in grabbing him, he has to come into that exact 20, 40 degrees there. So that's how Mother Nature sort of evens it out. It's not like you can get everything. And only 20% of the time would a good hunter be successful. Think about that. If every time you say you're hungry, you can only get food once every 5 times. That's how it goes. So it's tough out there in Mother Nature. That's why it's a survival of the fittest. And that's why she has planned it to make sure that the best survive so they can continue. With humans, it's a little different. It used to be that way a long time, but it's different because we have more things towards equity and giving people an opportunity. It's no longer the survival. We can think. So somebody who not maybe physically strong and can beat up somebody else can outthink and contribute.
The type of woodpecker that Woody is, are they all this color, the red, white?
Yeah, delineated, yes. Delineated is this color. He's really, it's one of the most amazing things to see when it just lands on a tree near you. And then you hear that sound. That sound is, once you've internalized that, you'll never forget it. You will find yourselves going somewhere, you hear that sound, like, oh my gosh, I know that sound, that's a woodpecker. And you look up.
Is it that he's anxious right now? Because he was making that sound even in the box, and now, is he okay?
He wants his food.
But he doesn't want to eat
he still has a little challenge going for it like this. So he's not hungry now. He's like, okay, maybe if you crush it up and stick it down my throat, I'll eat it. But I'm trying to keep him as hungry as possible so that he will go for it whole. So the first stage is literally feeding them like this. And once he starts going to it like this, I would put like an apple in there, piece of apple in there, and the worms will bite into the apple and go in there and hide.
Yeah.
And then take that and introduce him to that. And he was like, there are worms in there. And he's going to peck at it the same way he would.
Yes.
And then we go with something a little harder, and he would go in that also. And then he'll be ready to start feeding himself really by pecking wood. He has to learn to peck wood. He's going to learn that food is not going to come to you like this. That's not going to happen in the wild. We're not creating a pet. We don't want this animal to like us or anything like that. Once he starts pecking away, he's not going to like humans.
Yeah.
And we have a great instance. We have rehabbed at least 6 or 7 of them. But our most amazing rehab story, we are in Central, and there is one, well, Freeport. We rescued one in Philippines, down south. And we brought it up. Parents couldn't be found, nest area couldn't be found. And we started feeding it. First, the horrors like this of getting it to eat whole. Then it ate whole, and then the apple, and then the wood. And then we started putting him outside for him to get sun, get accustomed to changing times and temperatures and so on. And a pair of same lineated woodpeckers came to him each day and started feeding him through the cage. They did that 4 or 5 times a day for 5 days. And on day 6, we opened the cage and he flew off with them.
Wow.
They adopted him. That's how smart his call. That's his call, the parent call there. Okay, call mom, dad, you know, anybody around, sort of thing, they're around food.
Yeah.
So they responded to that and they started feeding him. So we stood there and just said, oh my God, is it? No, it's not attacking. And they're just hopping around the cage and putting their beak in, and he was eating. They were feeding him. And that is just, it's just amazing. That's the really best end result ever. Because we always wonder, my gosh, okay, so we did this and we let him go. Imagine we let him go without them. You know, every night you wonder, I wonder how he's doing out there. I wonder if he made it. I wonder if an owl got him. I wonder if some stupid human tried to shoot him or something like that. But going with the parents, you know there's that extra layer of protection and care, that parental love that he's going to get. And it's just absolutely thrilling.
Oh, that's different. That one is different.
Yes, they have, yep. That is the normal big boy call.
Yeah, I think I've heard that one before. It sounds really familiar. But you mentioned the hunting. Are these birds commonly hunted for? And are there any, you know, legalities when it comes to status?
All animals in Trinidad and Tobago wildlife are protected.
Right.
All. Okay, so people say, I didn't know this, I can do this. All are protected. Let everyone know that. What you do have is, through the Conservation of Wildlife Act, you are allowed to take or hunt certain species. And to do that, you need a permit. So if your permit says lizard and deer, you can't go hunting something else. Yeah. You're breaking the law. You're no longer hunting, you're poaching. None of these birds are allowed to be taken. There is barely anything on this bird. If this bird weighs 55 grams, it's probably heavy on a wet day. So what are you going to get from this? Okay, so there is absolutely no need to injure, harm, capture, or alter the life of such an animal. So you're just being wicked.
Yeah. Yes.
And we have gotten them shot. We've got this year, it's a flurry of shootings from flamingos, different types of hawks, owls. People are just shooting animals from a side. Have gun, trigger happy, will shoot. Because many of people who have guns don't actually even hunt. So they have to shoot something. So they're just shooting birds. Imagine shooting a kiskadee. Why would you shoot a kiskadee? It's just wickedness. Yeah, the apathy towards our environment is maddening. But it's what we have to deal with. So at no point in time should this animal be caught, injured, shot, and well, of course, dare I say, consumed. And I had a big blow up on Facebook because someone was selling snake meat. There is nowhere in the legal framework in our country is that possible. It's not allowed. Snakes are protected. You're allowed to protect yourself by killing the 4 venomous snakes, 4 species of venomous snakes we have in Trinidad, on your property. So that means, and this goes out to the hiking groups, you cannot go into the forest, people. You cannot go out there, find these animals in their homes and kill them. That is home invasion, right there. Going into their homes and killing them, doing what they're doing naturally. They don't come after you. Our 4 species of venomous snakes are very, very reclusive. Oh, sorry, you got this wrapped on your foot there. Sorry, hold on there. Let's get that off. Nice, off. Right, they're very reclusive. They don't want to be seen by people. They're usually nocturnal. So many times when you do encounter them, it's because they were disturbed. And you need to understand there are more and more people going into the bushes claiming to be hiking, and I just call them polluters. Most of them are polluters because they leave trails of garbage behind. They chop vegetation that is not necessary. Why are you going off the trail and cutting bush? Okay, you don't even know what it is you're cutting. It could be a rare plant struggling to come along and you just cut it down. Okay, it could be a plant that's going to enrich and nutrify a lot of other animals, but you cut it down because you have a cutlass that you bought in a fancy store and you're just swinging it around. So there's a lot. You can't take the city culture and attitude and put it into the bush. It's not going to work.
You have to know that when you're going out there, it's someone's home. It's something's home.
It's a different place, right? Behave right in the place, okay? Behave right. You're not going to go to an interview in your carnival costume and say, boss, I just coming from Tuesday and it was real good with tribe. I come to the no. Right place, right time, right behavior, right everything. So you've got to do it right. Stop leaving the garbage and oh gosh, the noise. The worst thing that probably invented was really smartphone. It has made people more stupid. So people have their phone in their pocket and a little speaker in their backpack, Bluetooth, and they're jamming music going in the bush. And then they come out and say, we ain't see nothing really in the bush, you know? Of course not. Of course not. You understand? The animals aren't going to sit there and bend over for you. They're gone. It's not, you know. So it's a whole culture that has to change. And so that's why we're always glad for the opportunity to come and educate people. This is what it's about. You know, I'm not going to beat anybody or anything like that. There are laws against that. And I'm a law-abiding citizen, you know. So no matter what I would want to feel inside, it comes down to me trying to educate you, to reach you, teach you, change hearts, change minds, change your country in a really effective and positive way. If you're nice towards these, it's easier to be nice towards other people. It's really that.
Mr. Mead, can you just tell us, let's tie in our woodpecker and our worms, you know, just give us a fun fact each about these 2 creatures.
Fun fact. Well, the lineated woodpecker, right, is native to Trinidad. Whether you've seen it or not, it is native to Trinidad. And when they fly, when they fly, they look almost as if they're falling out of the sky. They would flutter, flutter, drop, flutter, flutter, drop. There's a very unusual. So even if you hear the sound and you look up and you see a bird going flut, flut, drop, flut, flut, drop.
Why does he do that?
That's just their flying style. They're very, you know, just like parrots. Parrots look like they're always falling out of the sky. Okay? There's no time you'll ever see a parrot glide. Parrots cannot glide. They have like short, stubby wings, so they must do this all the time. And they fly, I'm not gonna fall, right? And so he is kind of flutter, you know, because I guess part of the hopping personality also. They sort of hop. They hop a lot. When they land on trees, they do a lot of hopping. So they do that flutter, glide. There's a slow glide, like, oh my gosh, my wings aren't that big. I can't glide that much. I flutter again and I glide, flutter again and glide. So they always up and down like that. They do a sort of wavy flight pattern. And so that is what you look out for. So slowly I'm turning into birders. If you start doing that, it's like, oh my gosh, Mr. Mead, I saw that. He's doing that sort of wavy thing. Lineated woodpecker.
So
that's what you.
As he's flying like that, he must get really tired quickly, and of course he's pecking as well. Is how does he recover from that? Does he sleep a lot?
Lots of energy.
Protein.
Mealworms. These aren't mealworms. Remember, these are superworms and all that good stuff like termites. They do a lot on termites in wood and stuff like that. Their termites are high in protein. All insects are high in protein. Very high in protein. In fact, cockroaches, I think they're going to be coming out with a cockroach milk soon.
No. Let's not do that.
You don't like roaches?
Cockroaches? To me, cockroaches are not for consumption. They're not. I don't care what anybody says or what scientists say. They are not for consumption.
But you know the truth is that you probably consume 0.05% of roaches and insects in almost anything you eat that came out of a food processing plant.
Let's move on.
and he agrees. What do you agree? What do you agree? So we move on.
Because we can't sanitize everything perfectly. A massive plant making your beef burgers and so on. A roaches gets in there, gets ground up. So we say, well, stop the plant. I think I saw a roach. Let's throw all this out. No, it's not going to happen.
No, it's not going to happen.
I want to be vegan now.
I think in cases like that, ignorance is bliss. We haven't seen it, so let's pretend it didn't happen.
You're like my cousin. She used to close her eyes and eat guavas. You know why?
Because worms.
Every time we bit into a guava, especially wild guava, you'll just see the end part of the worm pull back.
Yeah. Oh.
And she would like spit it out. She says, "I'm going to eat it," and that stopped her because I will say, "It have worms in that," and she says, "Okay."
Funny story. I've actually, one time I ate a mango. This was like probably 2 years ago or 3 years ago. I ate a mango, and I cut into the mango, and I found a worm just wiggle in the mango. I've never eaten a mango since. I've never had a mango since that time. I saw the worm. I can't do it.
Can't go back.
I can't do it. I am traumatized from that worm in the mango.
One day we'll be eating super worms, so
I won't. I won't. But let's hear the fun fact about the
super worms.
The worms, well, they are amazing survivors. They figure out their environment and they know. Would you like to try one? I'm just going to slide it over there for you, right? I'm sorry, I know you're afraid of mangoes. No, it's the worms, right. Anyway, they read their environment, and if instead of dying, they will go through that change, metamorphosize, and leave that area. Okay, so they are very adaptable. So is it that they have a brain or not? You know, we're still trying to understand the cognitive capabilities of these animals and if they think and how they process the environment. But somehow it seems that they are, to a certain extent, smarter than we are. They're more aware of the environment than we are.
And you said they're not worms, they're caterpillars. Yes. Because, I mean, worms don't have legs. Worms slide on their belly.
Yeah.
So these little things, they have
legs, and they change. Worms don't change. A worm is a worm is a worm. So it's an earthworm or a red wriggler, whatever it is, it's going to be that for life. Yeah. This is just a phase in its life.
I think it's the most fascinating thing that this will turn into a beetle. Yep. Because growing up, we never heard anything about that. It was always that a caterpillar turns into a butterfly or a moth. I've never, ever heard of a caterpillar to a beetle. I didn't know that beetles had that form.
Insects, well, it's the life cycle of an insect. Except for a couple of insects, almost all insects have 4 stages in their life. Egg, larva, catalyst or pupa, and then adult.
Right.
So all insects, except for the two of the most miserable ones don't do that. And they would be flies and roaches. They've skipped a stage to make sure that they get to you faster.
Yeah.
Okay. So
thank you.
That is, that's pretty much what it is.
The stage that they skipped would be what?
They literally go, I think it's egg, nymph, adult. No larval stage. No larval stage.
So,
when they hatch out, they're baby.
Flies are...
flies are egg.
Maggots, right?
Maggot.
Isn't that the larvae stage?
Yeah, flies are different. But they've shortcut and they've done it in a rapid manner.
Wow.
So they can get... because
the lifespan of a fly is like a couple days.
Some of them, they're different kinds. Can go up to weeks, some up to months and so on like that there. But, insects are fascinating. I mean, Trinidad has the loudest insect in the world. What is that? You know it. You've heard it.
The loudest insect.
What do they say? It's calling rain? What is it?
It's calling what?
They say it's calling rain. When you hear that, it's calling rain.
That is a...
You know it. It's right there. See? Chinese call it a seagull. But it's a cicada.
A cicada, yes.
Cicada, yes. Cicada.
They're big.
Up to a couple of years, they're loud. They are loud. Yeah, and you hear it before,
they hide very well.
Yes, they go underground for a while, as they stay a very long time in the larval stage, nice and thick grubs, and you can't eat them. There's one like that, the palm grub in Guyana. That's eaten. You see them in this big fat grub and they put it in this squishy stuff coming out their mouth and so on there. I haven't tried it yet, but I am dying to try it.
So I know we have to wrap soon, but I wanted to find out, you would have put a little bit of tape in there. Can the super worms chew through that, or is that...
A piece of paper? Oh, they'll eat that paper. Yeah, it's paper. Yeah, paper.
How quickly would... Because I'm seeing that it's kind of wiggling around it.
Yeah, well, if it was a little more damp, it would have been gone already. They're drawn to moisture, so moisture represents more nutrition and life for them. And yeah, they are amazing what they did. And I have tried, I'm not telling you about something on the internet only. I have tried, I've taken a tray, a styrofoam meat tray, and I've placed it in there. And in 2 days, the entire meat tray was gone. gone. I want to do it again using a time-lapse photography, so people can see how these things attack. Definitely, we'll be doing that. Yeah, these things attack styrofoam, and hopefully cluing some young person out there. Wait a minute. Let me figure this out. Let me try this. This is what it is. Sometimes the smallest thing that you see. Okay, think of how Velcro works. Okay, and somebody who probably came up with that, seeing the buds and stuck to your clothes and stuff like that. So it's sometimes the smallest thing gets those minds triggering. So we may have a plastic solution.
Very simple.
Right
I mean, just to comment on that, I understand where these worms can come in handy with regard to our plastic issue worldwide, but for them to deal with these plastic issues, it would mean we would have an increase in these beetles. unless they come with
microplastic.
I would prefer the beetles.
No. I mean, I can't think the amount of plastic that we use daily and the amount of plastic waste that there is. I mean, we would need millions, probably trillions of these things to deal with the plastic issue, and that to me seems not
impractical.
Yeah.
Well, you have to look at the system, the whole system. You all produce plastic. We can't seem to have enough ways to reduce human plastic consumption and use. So then you collect them. You have a station. So imagine. And they would take up much less space than a dump and all that sort of stuff. You take your plastics there, they deal with it, and then afterwards you have to do something with them. You know what they become after that? Animal food. Animal food. All safe, they tested and so on, animal food. Right? So right now, sources of animal food, to get protein in animal food would be fish, other animal byproducts. So it's expensive and smelly and stuff like that there. Whereas with this here, no smells, no problems. Yeah, so it's a whole chain. It doesn't stop there. It goes on to something else. So like right now, black soldier fly, that's something that's now beginning to blow up in Trinidad. That's the future for us here in feeding animals. And I have done it before on a small scale, and it is just really the most amazing thing. And for people who don't know what that is, long time those of us who had something called the outdoor toilet, aka latrine. And if you ever had to go the displeasure of going there in the night, with your flambeau, your flashlight, your little silver flashlight, you just press the button and you shine down inside there. It would, you would have died. You would have just died and fallen into that pit if you had to do that. Because if you're afraid of these cute little cuddly worms here, and you look down in that pit and you see billions of black soldier fly larvae just moving like that. Look at her face, oh my gosh, all right.
I was born in the rat generation.
In the rat generation? Yeah. But that, people thought those were maggots. They're not maggots, they're black soldier fly larvae. And they are strange because one of the few insect-type things that's high in calcium. Because insects don't have an exoskeleton. Calcium is usually lacking and you have to add that. But they have noted that they're high in calcium. So it's almost a perfect food. So you're raising chickens organically and stuff, that is the food for them. And then you would get some amazing eggs from those creatures. So the future is in insects. Remember there's what, 50 gazillion insects on the face of the earth, right? They said about 2 billion insects per person.
That's very interesting.
Right, of all different kinds.
Yes.
And we're still discovering some right here in Trinidad. Eh? We still have things that we can find.
I think that's a really good point to end on. I think we actually have to wrap, unfortunately. Bye, Woody.
No, this conversation was very enlightening and educational. So it was, I think somebody should definitely, jump on that, the worms, the caterpillars, and the plastic, and find some way to incorporate that to deal with the plastic issues that we have, not just in Trinidad, but worldwide. Because I think it would be very helpful.
Yeah.
But Woody's adorable. I am still amazed at his color and him being native to Trinidad and Tobago.
Like he has a chiconia on his head.
Yes. He was made to be Trini.
Well, that will bring us to the end of Wild Wednesday this morning, as well as the program. I do hope that you enjoyed our program this morning. Jade and I definitely enjoyed being back here, and we will see you again tomorrow. Thank you, Mr. Mead, for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having us as usual.
And we will be back next week Wednesday with another animal. So we do hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and
as
be
always,
safe. As always, today's a good day to have a good day.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.
WESN.
Here is your WESN News on the Hour. I'm Naomi McNish. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Housing Minister is open to continuing PNM projects. Young warns the new Prime Minister on gas alternatives. New ministries settle into roles. Energy Chamber backs Grenada gas plants. Now for the details. New Housing Minister David Lee says he's open to continuing projects started by the former administration once they meet legal and ministry standards. Speaking to media on his second day in office, Lee said he's reviewing documents and will consult with department heads. On the proposed $45 million mall in Port of Spain, Lee said it appears to have potential but must undergo full review. He noted the project falls under the East Port of Spain Development Company, and funding details will be examined before any final decision is made. Former Prime Minister Stuart Young has criticized Prime Minister Kamala Persad-Bissessa's plan to seek gas from Grenada, Guyana, and Suriname, warning that those options are years away from being viable. At a May 5th media briefing, Young said Grenada has no proven reserves and infrastructure is lacking. He also warned that pipelines from Guyana or Suriname would cross Venezuelan waters, making Venezuela unavoidable in any regional energy plans. Young dismissed claims that the Dragon gas deal is dead, insisting negotiations with the U.S. are still possible and that proven reserves are already in place. Government ministers hit the ground running on May 5th, meeting with staff and assessing their ministries. Some, like OPM Minister Barry Padarath, reported challenges such as mold and flooding at Whitehall. Others, like Social Services Minister Vandana Mohit, said they were ready to work from day one. New Finance Minister Dave Tanku received briefings and said he looks forward to a strong partnership with his team. Rural Development Minister Khadija Amin has already ordered flood mitigation plans and shelter SOPs. Education Minister Dr. Michael Dowlath and his team have begun reviewing policies and programs, calling it a major assignment. The Energy Chamber has welcomed the government's plans to pursue natural gas opportunities with Grenada. Prime Minister Kamala Persad-Bissessa and Energy Minister Dr. Rudal Munilal expressed intent to explore gas resources in Grenada waters. The Nutmeg field, first drilled in 2017, remains largely untapped. The Chamber sees a chance for both countries to benefit economically through shared infrastructure. Meanwhile, discussions are also underway to explore energy partnerships with Guyana and Suriname. Well, that's your news to the hour on WESN. I'm Naomi McNish. Thanks for watching.
WESN.
Do you need treatment for obesity or any related abdominal procedures? The community hospital now offers minimally invasive laparoscopic surgery done by an American-trained, board-certified surgeon with over 20 years' experience. Give us a call at 235-5479 for more information.
The Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventists,
where good private health care is affordable.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fanzone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
I want to get a tattoo.
You really
respond
wanna
to me. Respond to me how you would respond to me.
The first question I'd ask is why?
Controversial taboo topics.
We get so consumed by church, we forget that we have to live the life of being a Christian outside of the Sunday.
Like you say,
services, yeah.
we think going to a service makes us a Christian.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right. So here we are about to hear the second time Pastor J wanted to take a tattoo.
Would have been late last year and early this year.
Oh gosh.
Hope Unfiltered podcast with Pastor J and Ren.
This is 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson. The distance from where we should be in the world in going forward on our commitments with climate change.
The effects of climate change that cannot be accounted for. It's called loss and damage. And we're seeing loss and damage happening so much more in this decade and the previous decade.
The principal term there was this question of the correspondent banking issues.
That is why we're trying to build capacity with this country here, Trinidad and Tobago, and other countries in the region. Man is not showing any signs of stopping or even slowing down. More than half of the forest in Trinidad is already gone.
All the plants and all the animals and all of the nice clean water and fresh air and everything had to be on this planet for humanity to have a chance.
We have small change when it comes to countries that can take decisions, and when they speak, the world listens.
The General Assembly is a very democratic forum. And Trinidad and Tobago has the same vote as Canada, in spite of the obvious difference in size.
WESN.
One of the things that I hoped we would see after the election is a result that would indicate the population wanted something different. And by different, I don't just mean swapping out the yellow for the red, but rather they wanted to see operations that are different, communications that are different. More often than not, you don't actually see those things change. You see different projects, but the how, you don't see change. You see the what they say may change, when they say it, about what, but how they say it, how they engage, how they implement. Do we see change? How often do we see any sort of innovation or shift? Because part of the issue was the fact that too many politicians felt that it was okay to not speak to the population. They may have their press conferences and media releases, and in many ways, the press conferences that had follow-up question sessions for members of the previous administration, like Dr. Keith Rowley and Com Imbert, to some degree buoyed or held off disaster in that previous situation. Of course, ultimately speaking, you still needed good content in these press conferences, otherwise your words became empty and emptier. And by good content, I mean actual government policy, implementation, projects, etc., that were successful, which was not always the case. A lot of the times it was very defensive. And to some extent, it set up itself for failure. And I do wonder if many politicians are looking at that and saying, well, let's not do that because it didn't work for them. The reason why it didn't work was not because the process didn't work, it was because the inputs, it was already a disadvantageous hand that you're trying to play, and then you're complaining the game is not a good game. Well, you decided to stand on that hand. You decided to accept the SRC recommendations and stand on that hand. It's not the game's fault that it didn't work out in your favor. Now we're in a transition period. But I'm already starting to be afraid that we're going to get business as usual when it comes to communication. And what I said on the night of the election was I wanted to see more transparency and more open communication. It's not enough to just have a press release and to give a statement to the cameras. I will always say that I will always show my appreciation, let me put it that way, for when Dr. Keith Rowley took questions, because he did it more frequently than most. I would argue even he didn't do it enough, but he did it more than everybody else, so I kind of have to give him some credit. And I hope that the current administration is not going to shy away from engaging with the media and engaging with the public in any meaningful way. Right now it seems as though, well, the government has to set things up. We understand that. Even I have a little bit of impatience because I kind of want to see the results. It's not too dissimilar. I'm finding a lot of parallels personally between sports and politics right now, because right now certain sports are in the off season, so you can't wait for the season to start so you could see how things are coming together with actual results. It's a similar thing. I want to see how this government works so that I know, okay, what to say or what not to say. Until then, I'm kind of left in limbo waiting. Is it going to be good? Is it going to be bad? Now, I don't have a team. I don't have a vested interest in this fight, but I do want to see the government do well because, you know, I want to see the country do well. That's where my stake in the situation is. But at the end of the day, I have to wait. I can't expect them to change things overnight. That's unrealistic and unreasonable. So I'll also wait to see how they communicate. You know, they have made a lot of public statements so far, but eventually, it doesn't matter how good you are, you're going to run into something that's somewhat controversial. You're going to run into something that is going to make you want to take a pause and shy away from the media and shy away from social media and shy away from the public. I definitely not want to have to answer difficult questions. And then we will see, with regards to communications and transparency, how this government starts to measure up to the previous one, because the previous one eventually was a disappointment. How they managed COVID really could have been a pretty good feather in their cap if they were not so inconsistent about various aspects about that. But it could have been. They just need to be a little bit better. But ultimately, I think they fell short. And even if they were great at it, look, Churchill was removed from office immediately, well, relatively speaking, once World War II was over. They rushed to put him in, and then they rushed to take him out. So dealing with a crisis is not necessarily be-all and end-all. in one's political career and political life. But now we have, I guess you could say, not so much specific crisis like a pandemic, which you know is going to have an endpoint, or some sort of conflict which you know is going to have an endpoint. We have ongoing social issues, and the crises is that they've grown out of control. They'll always be there. And part of the issue that people had with the previous administration was how that government communicated those issues. Are we going to get the same here? I have hope that some of the people in the majority government are going to be better than their predecessors. Minister Alexander of Homeland Security, he has had quite some time in front of the camera. So he, ironically, as much as he might be less politically experienced than his peers, he might have a better experience giving his opinion and talking about issues than many of his peers. And I hope that he could take some of his lessons from his time in broadcasting as a police officer and translate that now into a good spokesperson for national security. Yes, Homeland Security, but we know what it is. Meanwhile, there are some opposition members who have neither a role in the executive, nor did they win their seat, and all of a sudden they're spokespersons. I guess they never lost their role in the executive. They weren't fired, so they have to continue that. But it's funny that when they were in government, they didn't really hear anything much of them. And I'm speaking of the PRO of the PNM, Faris Hawari. PRO, who was conspicuously absent from the last two election results, the local and the general. But in the local, I would say it's more egregious because he was also the local government minister at the time. And now he's coming out, and I get it. And I want to caution people to understand. Some of what the opposition is saying right now, they're speaking to their base because they have to rebuild their base. The UNC, the majority government, doesn't have to worry about that right now. They just are on the high of victory. They don't have to rebuild their base. They were just successful. But the PNM lost 100,000 votes. They need to rebuild. So not all of the communication is for us. Unfortunately, usually when I say you're speaking to their base, or they're speaking to their base, that's kind of a dog whistle to kind of indicate it's a set of political bacchanal talk and not much substance to it. It's all emotional arguments to rile people up, to pull on their heartstrings in order to get them motivated to come back to the fold. Not for any sound, reasonable argument that has a lot of details and logic behind it, but rather just they're so bad, we need to be ready to deal with them. They now start. We don't know what to deal with yet. Settle down, calm down. But what makes it worse is that given the style and the persona that Faris Hawari has crafted, I don't know if he's the best person for this role. The UNC has someone for that role. I don't necessarily like the role, but I will acknowledge that the persona that they crafted for themselves, their public persona, I don't know if that's how they are in real life, so I'll say that, their public persona. The only person who I know, who I believe their public persona is how they are in real life is Watson Duke, but that's besides the point. The UNC has someone to fit that role, and it works regardless of whether you like someone doing that job or not, because there's a consistency in the philosophy of how they craft the overall message that goes in line with the persona, that goes in line with their history, that goes in line with the precedents of everything that they've done. That's not Faris Hawari. Faris is trying to be a smooth, sophisticated talker that is not known for aggression, and is coming across now that he's trying to be somewhat aggressive and bold. Dr. Keith Rowley, to some extent, was the best fit for that role in the previous government, because he was still able at times to also sound respectful and prime ministerial. If he did that more, maybe the results won't be as bad as they were. But And I'll speak more on this in a little bit, but case in point, this whole Whitehall situation. The UNC is saying it's unfit for purpose. The PNM is saying, prove it. And now we essentially in a he said, she said situation, except UDCOT says, well, it's going to take some time to fix the damage. The one consistent thing is that there's flooding damage in the basement. To what extent is the lack of the basement space making Whitehall potentially too small for the Prime Minister's office to function and cabinet to function? I don't know. Part of it, I guess, is the fact that the PNM needs to understand how they functioned isn't necessarily how the new administration wants to function. Now, as far as I'm aware, even the American White House has issues with things like space and age and maintenance and stuff like that. Believe it or not, right? It's not as grand and as pristine and as perfect as people think. But the real question is, to what extent is the damage in our Whitehall sufficient enough to say that it's unusable? If it's not to the preference of the UNC government, well, that's a different argument. But UDCOT is at least saying there's damage, it'll take some time to fix the damage. Now, the PNM is saying, well, we've been using the building up until the last 2 weeks. Most of the building is still usable. Now we're getting into the realm of subjectivity. Photos apparently have been published online on social media, but they have photos that show a dilapidated or damaged building, and they have photos that shows a pristine building, and they can't be verified either one. Meanwhile, I think the real question is, wasn't Whitehall recently renovated? So how did this flooding happen? And I think this is one of the longer-term questions that we have to ask, because it seems that the staff has complaints about the space. Now again, sometimes staff complaints are very valid and important to follow up on, and sometimes it's staff complaining about nonsense. That in and of itself, just the report that they've complained about the situation or they're unhappy with the situation, doesn't tell us enough. But what does tell us something is the fact that there is damage because there was flooding recently. But it was renovated recently. So the question is, was the renovation subpar? Because that seems to be, look, they had some issues with the Red House renovations. A gate collapsed on a guard. Part of the ceiling fell. Like, this is not what you want to see, because then comes the question of, well, how are these contracts that the government is sending out being executed? This is why, to some extent, the Ministry of Health's administration building is a success. Not because it was perfect from the jump. There was a flooding situation not too long after it was opened, right? I think within the first year. But the point was the government didn't pay for a thing and then now had to deal with the defects. The contractor still managed the building and had to deal with the defects. So, to some extent, we know that it's not that the contractor did shoddy work, because they have to deal with the consequences. They didn't leave shoddy work for the government to have to deal with. Whatever failure they have and whatever things that don't hold up, whatever issues that building has, they have to deal with it. So they have an incentive to do the best they can from the jump. Now, is there something to be said about the fact that we're going to have a limited expertise because of the scale of our country, and we're always going to have issues like this? What was so special about the end of last year and the rains from the end of last year to cause so much damage that the basement is unusable right now? Because the PNM admits, well, you can't use the basement. Of course, it also begs the question that, is Whitehall big enough for any government? And again, from what I understand, arguably the White House is not big enough for the American government. So then you have to have different arms that maybe it would have been nicer for them to be located with the president. Well, they can't be, right? And that's to some extent what the PNM was doing. The Cabinet Secretariat was not in the basement. They were in the basement, they had to move. Is Whitehall practical? And then that gives some, but not total, credence to the UNC's claim that Whitehall was a vanity project. Because if it's not practical, the fact of the matter is usually a government building like Whitehall will not be practical because it's old, so the time of its construction, it did not anticipate the needs of a government that eventually grew. All government bureaucracies have grown over the last however many decades you could go even older to hundreds of years, right? The American nation is about 200 years old. Their White House, when built, it was a while ago. It can't anticipate the growth of the government bureaucracy now. I personally am arguing that we need to cut the excess fat, but hey, at the end of the day, the government bureaucracy will grow. There will be more ministries, there will be more ministers, there will be more staff, even if you try to keep it trim and lean. But to what extent now, usually you're still in the building, and you just, because it's a national status symbol of pride, it's expected that you just have to deal with it, and your successive governments stay in the building. That's usually what happens. But we had a situation where the governments had to find an alternative. So now, is it due to national vanity that we have to go back to Whitehall? How practical is that? Well, I would argue to some extent some government functions probably still could be in Whitehall, but the question is which ones. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, the good lady should be here. There's more to talk about, but we have to move on the conversation. Stay tuned to Talking on WSN. We'll be right back after this.
My name is Dr. Stephen Carroll, the CEO at Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist, and we are committed to making good private health care affordable.
For all your medical needs, including dental, radiology, laparoscopy, behavioral and mental health, along with many other services, contact us for more information at 235-5479.
Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
As always, we appreciate you starting your day with us. Let's get into this morning's first conversation.
Is the country's healthcare system more at risk more than ever?
Why it has remained unaddressed for so long.
Political parties get lots of cash, big cash from financiers, and then when they get that now, you can't account for it.
But it's really the specialist nurses who we are in a greater shortfall for.
We can tap into the resources and have them, at least form some mentorship programs.
Highlight our food systems, and which will attract persons from all over the world to come and experience something that actually supports the local economy.
We're lucky that we have a vibrant legal system that allows change to take place, and it's not that matters are just swept under the carpet and discrimination is allowed to be perpetrated.
A lot of people don't know that there were attempts to ban the carnival, suppress the carnival.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fanzone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
This is 10 questions. I'm Andy Johnson. The distance from where we should be in the world in going forward on our commitments with climate change.
The effects of climate change that cannot be accounted for. It's called loss and damage. And we're seeing loss and damage happening so much more in this decade and the previous decade.
The principal term there was this question of the correspondent banking issues.
That is why we're trying to build capacity with this country here, Trinidad and Tobago, and other countries in the region.
Man is not showing any signs of stopping or even slowing down. More than half of the forest in Trinidad is already gone.
All the plants and all the animals and all of the nice clean water and fresh air and everything had to be on this planet for humanity to have a chance.
We are a small change when it comes to countries that can take decisions, and when they speak, the world listens.
The General Assembly is a very democratic forum. And Trinidad and Tobago has the same vote as Canada, in spite of the obvious difference in size.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity, from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378, or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
And we're back and talking about the WSND Content Capital Show. Michael Small, joined by the good lady herself, former Minister of Finance, Karen Eshishero. A background that is a bit useful given the current situation of looking at the new members of Cabinet and trying to see where we could go from here. But more importantly, Karen does have maybe a few observations or things, campaign promises, or maybe things that were not spoken about in the campaign that she would like to touch on, things she would like to see, things that she thinks important, things that I also think that are important. So, of course, welcome, Karen.
Thank you very much, Sean. Well, first of all, I want to congratulate Kamala Prasad, sorry, I'm mixing it up. I actually had the opportunity to be in class with her at the Executive MBA at Arthur Lockjack, so she has my congratulations. Not only has stay in the course, my gosh, she did stay the course. And she is to be congratulated. And there's a feeling of euphoria that has translated in the country. So all very good, and it's very early in the day. So I want to premise whatever I say with that. It's much too early in the day to make any definitive statements about anything or about any minister at all. The only thing I could say that, and it has been persecuted already by other persons, and I think it's a valid concern, is that the number of women in her cabinet. This is something that would, is concerning, especially since you have many jurisdictions, including India, where they have legislated a minimum of 30% of the membership in the parliament should be female. And the reason is not, I read an article and it said something about feminism. I think that is a very trigger word, and I don't think that it's fair to categorize it like that. It's a question of representation. That's what Parliament is about. And therefore, we should see an equivalent representation as much as possible within the Parliament to represent the female, because our population is at minimum half female, gender, and male. So I think that would be the line from which I would address it, not anything to do with feminism. It's just about having that representation. So I was disappointed to see that. I do know that two of her ministers got what I would call not only big ticket, but ministries that one would say, well, it's gender neutral. And that's Julian John, who is female minister of Works, and you have Khadija Amin, which is the Minister of Local Government and Rural Development. But when you look at the big ticket, I put it that way because when you look at the budget as Minister of Finance, yes, just on that alone, but on other bases too. All the major ones we would think of, which would be finance, energy, education, health, and national security, have been given to men. I do know that I don't know if they made the appointment yet for trade and investment and tourism as one. That's one ministry.
I don't think, no, they haven't yet. So right now, the parliamentarian secretary is the only appointment to that ministry.
So we'll have to.
So yes, I know that there was that certain people have been. A lady has been tipped.
Yeah, but the
off
other
the media for that role.
Other people have been tipped too, and
right?
So
okay.
That has to be resolved. So I am concerned about that. It's true that the president, the opposition leader, and the prime minister are all female. But when it comes to your cabinet, you elect it. You select them. You don't elect them. So I did think that.
One thing also has been in the press has reported. We don't know how true it is. Former Senator Janti Lakshmidiyal has been tipped for the head of the Senate.
Yes.
Right. Wade Mark tipped for the head of the House. Speaker of the House, sorry.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things Dr. Mohammed did point out, that he was wanting to see if those two roles might also be filled by women, to say that those kind of leadership positions at the top of the government will be all female. What do you make about that? Does that, to some extent, help? Because that role is different, right? You're not so much advocating now. That is more of just presiding, right?
Yeah, but it's an important.
It's an important role
because you can tell people that you've overstayed your, gone over your allotted time. There's a lot of powers.
Overstepped your bounds.
And there are a lot of powers in both the Speaker and the President of the Senate. But I do stick to that issue, and I think many people have spoken about it, and it's not a concern that doesn't need to be ventilated. I mean, now we have a new government, and we have always committed, Sean and I, to being fair. Whoever's in government, we have always going to look at, they're the ones making policy, they're the ones making laws, they're the ones delivering to the people, and so I stand by saying it's far too early to hold their feet to the fire. It's far too early.
I just want to say this. Some people might speculate as to why this happened with regards to reduced female representation in cabinet. I have a reason that could be completely wrong, so I do not want to say it because it's pure speculation and it will be very controversial and it's not necessarily useful at this time. If there is enough evidence to say that it might be true, then I'll mention it. But I do just want to say this now so people don't think, oh, you're only saying in hindsight, with the benefit of hindsight, if it happens on the road, which I don't necessarily think it would be, because I don't think it's that big of an issue. But there is an observation within the UNC and the internal politics of the UNC, and I'll just leave it at that, and we can move on.
Yeah, and also too, we don't know what you're thinking, so we don't know what you tell them later on. You see, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
So that's, in any event, so that's a concern with the cabinet appointments. The other thing, and we look for an explanation for this one, Ministry of Trade, Investment and Tourism. I didn't understand, and I'm sure we will find out when the minister is appointed, why was tourism tacked on to that ministry? There probably is a good idea, but the optics don't really flow into the idea that you're creating new revenue streams, which the country desperately needs given its debt profile and its foreign exchange position. So I do think that we need explanation for that, because that's a lot to put on one minister. I don't know how the synergies are there. I don't know what the synergies are there, but I mean, I think tourism is a big ticket item to earning foreign exchange, and certainly for Tobago and for us. I have spoken about this so many times, so I won't belabor that point.
Just to clarify, because the allocations of tourism has not been a big ticket, you're saying that it should be a big ticket item because the potential is there.
Well, no, the thing about it is that we know that time and time again, when we listen to budgets in all administrations, we don't have control over price. We've seen our economy tank when price of energy products, the hydrocarbons, the natural gas and the oil are depressed. And we see the economy doing extremely well when those prices are high. So we know that you don't have to be a rocket scientist to know that our revenue and our economy, our revenue and expenditure is tied very closely to the energy prices. So we know right now, I've spoken on this program, and also I did a Facebook on the energy sector. For gas, it's trading very well. Natural gas over the $3 budget. So I will not be surprised if there is a surplus. I know someone said that because oil is trading below par, at $54.
Yeah,
$64. I don't necessarily think that is a bad thing. The refinery is not up and running, and if it were, it would be good. And then the price of the fuels that you import should have dropped because we're importing it through barrier trading. And in any event, oil has played a very relatively minimal part in terms of the energy sector. We're getting like 56,000 barrels of oil per day from domestically, and whereas in the heyday, you'd get over $1 million barrels per year, per annum. I mean, that's significant. So I don't know that the depression in the price of crude oil is going to impact our revenue. In fact, I think the natural gas, even though production is below what we would like, the price can make up for that. It did so in 2022, so I don't see why it shouldn't happen again, as long as it stays up there. So coming back to the point about tourism, I couldn't quite see, given that this government has signaled that it's not going to have this attitude which the former Prime Minister had, which is diversity, and that's such an annoying word. We see that agriculture and agribusiness, I think, is going to be given a big part to play in the revenue stream, foreign exchange earnings, not only that, but the country having a level of food security. We're importing about $7 billion a year in food, so that is going to be a big item for us, and also it will stimulate the agri-industry, and I'm hoping they will go for upmarket, boutique-type value-added, where the highest value-added can be obtained in the chocolates and in the rum-based products, and so on. So I think agriculture is going to play a big part, definitely. And she did, and the Prime Minister did signal that in a way. She said, all the rural communities, she mentioned about 4 or 5 of them. She says, I hear you, I see you, I hear you. And that to me says to me that she is saying, I am going to put agriculture front and center. And I hope that that will also translate into the urban communities, because there's a lot of land space, a lot of young people who would like to get into the agribusiness, but don't have the financial resources or backing to do so. So that's a good thing. As I said, tourism, there must be an explanation, so I wait that one. The other one that I was already pleased to see, because there was an explanation for the national security, which is now broken up into Homeland Security. I don't see anything wrong with using Homeland Security name. The most important thing is Homeland. I know it's sort of is a paying homage in a way, or whatever you want to say for the USA, which is talk about Homeland Security. But I think it's clear enough, and then the defense is dealing with border control. And I'm glad that she split that up into 2, because the cause of much of our crime in this country, which is one of the major crime and economy, were the major talking points and major issues that affected the country and affected the voting patterns, is I'm glad to see that she has done that, so that Roger Alexander can focus on Homeland, the police, the defense, but not so much the defense, the police and the fire, etc., to deal with internal and dealing with the gangs. And you have Wayne Sturge, who has a strong background as a criminal defense lawyer, dealing with the border control. And so that, to me, signals a good approach. However, I will say that my concern is with regards to the Prime Minister saying at the very day in which she was sworn in, actually, saying that she was going to do with what she said, low-hanging fruits, things that she can implement immediately, and that is with the stand your ground legislation that she mentioned, together with increasing the number of FUL licenses. That is a very, well, we have to wait and see what version the Attorney General is going to come up with. But every reading that I have done, you see, a lot of it comes down to, if I have to be more open about it or transparent about it, I mean, the reality is that the persons who are in the business community are the persons, generally speaking, at the high end or the upper strata of the drug and the drug trade. So sometimes, yeah, I said, yeah, I'm not saying all.
Okay, right.
No, I didn't say all. I didn't say all. I said if you're going to, like all animals are not dogs, but all dogs are animals.
Right.
Right? So I'm not saying that. I'm saying that, what's that?
No, well, are all drug lords businessmen? I guess they would all say that they're businessmen. That's
But
like even if they don't actually have a business.
But they have to have a front.
If they say what they do.
I'm talking at the top echelon. I'm not talking about the middleman.
Yeah,
right? Who's driving a better car than
Yeah.
he would normally drive, or living in a better neighborhood than he would have normally. See, how is salary letting him afford that? So I'm not talking about that, even though they could be hiding the money and they know they have to be careful how they show the money that they can't explain, right? It's unexplained wealth. That's what the poker is about. So what I'm saying is that at the upper end or the upper echelon of the drug trade, as we understand it in this country, and all reports have, is that it would have to be persons who are involved in the business community, because you have to have and they could have legitimate businesses too. It doesn't have to be all illegitimate businesses. So the point I'm making there is this, that the stand your ground laws in America, the major thing with Trayvon Martin, starting with that, businessmen don't walk around with cameras, body cameras, do they? Right? So, and dead men tell no tales, okay? So you go, who's going to say whether you were defending yourself or whether you shot first? Because, who's going to say that? And who is going to say that the person who came there and with a hit was a hit because you didn't deliver or whatever? And let's be real about it. So the reality of that is, in the United States, the issue of race has become, that became a tipping point in the United States with Trayvon Martin and other persons who were killed with the stand your ground legislation. I suspect that we're going to find it's going to be a very difficult piece of legislation for one to implement without some controversy attached to it. And we'll have to wait and see what the Attorney General comes up with, what the opposition and the government says about that legislation. But that, together with opening up the opportunities for persons to have licensed guns, I imagine it is the business community would be ones who are mostly targeted, and a lot of them are not involved in anything illegal at all, but they will be mostly targeted. And so we have to wait and see how that is going to play out. Because with the extrajudicial killings shown, that was what they said, one of the reasons why the United States insisted that it was in the paper. So I am not saying this. They changed the name from SORT to another name because there were too many extrajudicial killings. And the one they talked about was the two men who fell off the seats and died. I am not defending them at all. Don't get me wrong.
You're not defending, you're not saying that they were innocent.
No, absolutely
right?
not.
But the fact that they died in police custody is still an issue.
Exactly. And the fact is also, too, that the body cameras, that they don't often wear it, and they might take it off, or they say they haven't been, I think they did something with the Joint Select Committee, one of those, and one of the senior officers said that they didn't have as many body cameras, although they had been ordered. So it's all I'm saying right now, it has controversy over those, and the way in which she put that at front and center as low-hanging fruits. I would think a low-hanging fruit would be the DPP. The DPP is, it is a matter that even in your previous administration, I think you'll pass a cabinet note agreeing to give the DPP more than 100 more officers, lawyers. So you understand the difficulty for the DPP. And recently he was in a Joint Select Committee meeting and he again talked about that. And I think that is a low-hanging fruit. That is the prosecutorial arm of government. People do not prosecute matters unless they're given a private license to do so by the DPP. All matters are prosecuted by the state. That's who prosecutes matters, whatever it is, whether it's murder, theft, robbery, you name it, and the defendant is going to be the person accused. So we need to look at that. And
just to clarify, so because you said you like the split, but now we have a Minister of National Defense. The assumption is he's going to have a close eye of the services like the Coast Guard and the Defense Force. Roger Alexander, Minister Alexander, he obviously is going to be looking at the police and a lot of the internal stuff. And you have been talking about transnational crime. I've been talking about the porous borders for quite some time. So do you hope that the fact that now there's a minister, we saw the PNM do it for the police, and it didn't necessarily make too much of a difference. Do you think now that there's a minister to say, my focus is on the national defense, which includes the borders, right? And yes, it might cause maybe the working relationship with the police might still not be easy, but now the government at least is saying we're going to focus on this and hopefully get a better result.
That is exactly what I'm saying, because what they have, I read the breakdown between the two separate ministries to understand it better, and they did give you an indication of the portfolio of both ministers. And this is what I have said from the beginning, and I don't think it is a wrong conclusion to come to. All that we see acted out on our streets, by and large, are the symptoms of a crime, which is based on the gangs, which is based on the dealing with money laundering, which is also related to the drug trade and so on. So I am glad to see that they have given the focus on transnational crime, and I suspect they'll be working more closely with the United States in relating to that, because Donald Trump, whatever one may have one's views on it, he takes things personally. That's what he has shown. And one of the things he takes personally is that he never drank. I said that before. He's a teetotaler, and because he saw his brother die from alcohol-related illness, and I don't think any of his children drink. So I think he has a vested interest, because the drugs go either to the United States or to Europe. And so I think even when the Prime Minister said with the Venezuelans, which I have been open about, if you are here illegally, fine. But there are too many of them who are here who are not here illegally, and you're hearing nearly every 2 or 3 weeks they're involved in some serious criminal activity. I mean, the Dominicans came here when they had their country, their island was almost devastated with a hurricane. You didn't hear anything about the Dominicans. The Venezuelans come here, and I'm sure if you did a real count, there's some villages they say down in the Carcos and say they're just Venezuelans, and you always see that they are involved in some sort of criminal or questionable activity. They need to be sent home, because I am sure the drugs that are coming to this country are coming from, I am not saying it, that's what they say, Colombia and through Venezuela and down to Trinidad. So I think it's about time that we really get serious, and it is in our interest. We have the Privy Council, we don't have a problem with the Privy Council. Well, let's have not a problem with somebody intervening, because they have never been able to deal with the crime situation in this country in any meaningful way. And it's only, in my view, until you deal with the cause and stop focusing on the symptoms, you're not going to make any headway. And on that point, let me just say this. It is true when they said that the Prime Minister said I don't think she said that she cut it by half or cut it by quarter. She said you will see a reduction. And in fairness, because I was in class with her when we did the MBA, and so we saw the data. And it was true that when the UNC was in office, you saw a decline in the crime numbers. It was true. I mean, that was true. So I think that given the position that she has taken, I am concerned about the stand your ground, and in combination with the FUL, I am concerned about that. But otherwise, I think she's sent a good message, and I think she's prepared to work with the United States. I'm sure they're glad to hear her position on Venezuela, and so that's a positive message.
Rubio has reached out multiple times now to congratulate her personally.
Right, and I'm sure she has signaled that before. She has also been, I'm not taking a position on this. I want to stop the gas, okay? I do want to stop the gas. Because all of us are going to suffer, all of us, right? On different levels. I do want us to have it, but I mean, the fact of the matter is, right now, Venezuela is in the crosshairs of the United States, and Ghana is a CARICOM country, Suriname is a CARICOM country, and ExxonMobil is there, and they're making lots of money in Ghana. So their interest is Ghana, Suriname, and not Venezuela. And she has made it clear that she feels that the Dragonfield deal, now I don't know if she said it's off the table completely. I have said for now, but the reality is, it's not on the table because of the fact that it is America and Venezuela's relationship, and it's not going to change in the short to medium term.
I want to, before we run out of time, I did want to bring up the fact the Ministry of Planning is now planning and economic development, among other things. And you have some insight on that new minister, Kennedy Sorak Singh.
Oh, look at him there.
Because you know him, and you have confidence in him, which you don't always have confidence in so many people that you know personally. I'll just leave it at that. But in fact, I myself am being informed by you, and I do have a lot of hope for his appointment, because now, at the very least, it looks as though, hey, we actually have a vision. He has experience, but also the appointment is showing Ministry of Planning, we actually have a point now to have it, right? It didn't seem as though it had any specific function, and people sometimes wonder what is it for. Economic development, to have a point person now to kind of give the government a direction for economic development. That's what it seems like in this appointment.
Yeah, so we are saying that it seemed like that. We can't say it with surety.
For sure, yes.
But Kennedy Swartzing, yes, we served in Manning's administration. But apart from that, when I couldn't find, well, I had to go to Barbados, let's put it that way. And so did he. We both went to Barbados. And he did a lot of work for the government. They had a Barbados government. He got so many contracts for them, so many development projects for them, and I have absolute confidence in him. He's done a lot of consultancy work, and he's very committed. We spoke a few times, and he has a background in service. Let's put it that way. I'll put it that broadly. So that background in service, being in cabinet, he has an advantage of many of the new ministers, because many of them may not have ever been in cabinet, and there's a politics attached to being in cabinet that he would have experienced, and experiences in a very personal way already. And also he has a proven track record, and I have all confidence in Kennedy that he is going to, I would be very disappointed if it were otherwise, so she made a very good appointment there. And tacking in economic development is saying something to you. He's saying that, and Sean actually kept pointing that out to me. He says, Karen, you realize you've given him economic development, added that into his planning?
Let me just be specific. Economic affairs and development. I don't
so broad. It's even broader.
Yes.
It's even broader. And there must be a reason for that. I mean, he has the experience, and he's going to bring that experience to play. And I'm confident he's committed to Trinidad and Tobago. We spoke a few times, and and also when we were in Barbados, we would meet, and I do have the confidence he has the best interest of Trinidad and Tobago, and he has the experience, and the capacity and capability to make a real good contribution to the cabinet, and by virtue of that, to Trinidad and Tobago.
And this does not seem to be a political type of appointment.
No.
Oh, I have to reward him because he did this and this and this and showed loyalty. This is more, this is a capable person. Am I correct in that? He's a capable man, so we want him to have a significant role, because one of my concerns was the economy was an important issue in the election, but who was the UNC's economic person? I mean, you could even say the same thing to some extent about the PNM. Who is the economic person to really provide the technical expertise to go along with the leadership that the rest of the political group brings to the table? And in this case, I was very happy to see, okay, right, they found an actual technical guy who also has political experience, which is the best of both worlds, as opposed to the whole contrast between Reginald Lamour and Camille Robinson-Regis in the previous administration's AG post. They were like, no, let's get someone that actually has some smarts in both sides of the equation, and it's making it look hopeful, yes?
Yeah, and I think he's bringing some things to the table. That's just what I will say, because I will just be speculating, but I do think so. And, and the thing about it, too, is I don't think they could have made him Minister of Finance, I mean, he was a PNM, or seen as a PNM anyhow, and I mean, it would not have been a good look. People worked hard in the party, and so I don't think that would have been
But also, it goes to the fact that as she split ministries, and we had this conversation with Dr. Mohammed, and I mentioned this to you briefly yesterday when we were talking, it seems as though it is a proactive decision to break down the areas of responsibilities.
That's what you said.
And when you do it this way, the Ministry of Finance might not have quite the same role, because Mr. Swartzing seems more like an implementer, get deals done, try to find new opportunities. The Minister of Finance has a lot of other responsibilities, most importantly, just the management, the administration of the Treasury, and crafting the budget, which to some extent is going to be...
And customs and excise.
Right, but like...
And valuation division.
The budget part is going to be informed by cabinet. It's not like the Minister of Finance goes to cabinet and say, well, here's the budget for you. I determine it by myself.
No,
so to some degree, like, the role of finance, maybe it might be more specialized than in times gone by.
As it should be. Because, I mean, my understanding certainly was when I was minister, you had a strategic plan, and each ministry was allocated the policies and legislation that they would be responsible to by virtue of the ministry to which they were assigned. And when it came to the budget, it also reflected the priorities of the government. And so therefore you got the allocation reflecting that. So you didn't sit down as Minister of Finance. You're not the Prime Minister. Although, of course, the practice has been to make the Prime Minister Minister of Finance, because the Minister of Finance has a role in which they have a global view of all the ministries. They have to. So in a sense, it's operating in a sense for having that, that sort of perspective that a Prime Minister would have. But you're not the policy maker. You are part of the cabinet and part of the policy making. So that, I think, was a bit blurred, and people felt so. And in fact, when I was there before, there were 3 ministers, including the Prime Minister.
Oh, well, again, before we run out of time, one of the things that the current Minister of Finance did speak about on the campaign trail was, you know, contracts that were improperly awarded. Right, and that goes back to you mentioned it. I didn't necessarily want to bring it up because I didn't know if you wanted to go there or not when we were planning for today's show. But you instantly brought up procurement when I said there.
Yes, I want to say this. You know, she talked about low-hanging fruits. So one of them is the DPP office, which deals with the crime, and the procurement regulations for the lease of the refinery. It's sitting now in cabinet according to the permanent secretary at a policy at a joint select committee meeting or public accounts committee. I don't know which one it was, but she said the regulations are there before the cabinet, the previous cabinet. So please pass that. So let the matter be dealt with by the procurement regulator, who's responsible for transparency, accountability, and value for money. That's the proper person to deal with the lease of the refinery. And now you can pass the regulations, and she can be empowered to do what she couldn't do before.
But not just the refinery. We also
that's a big ticket item.
I know, but there's also
right
just
there.
Contract awards in general. I guess you could say, won't you say that, look, if you want to prove that you're better than the PNM, you said you're better than the PNM, now we're going to see you come in. One of the things you could do, not necessarily very quickly, but one of the things you could implement at the start of the agenda, and it shouldn't take too much effort, is to finish putting the procurement regulations in place and to finish all that off for all facets of it, so the procurement regulator could then be that independent body to ensure that everything is above board.
Okay, but I will say to that, the Prime Minister did signal that she was going to revisit the procurement legislation and make some amendments. So she said that, so we hope to look for that to happen. But when you speak to the procurement regulators, certainly you get the impression, and the facts seem to bear it out, many of the ministries are not compliant. Many of the, state-owned enterprises are not compliant. Many of them do not, they do their own thing. And so that one of the things I know that Stuart Young, who was former Prime Minister, talked about a ministry. I don't think a ministry is the answer, because that's another level of bureaucracy. And until you sort out the public sector, I think you need to revisit that approach. But certainly you must legislate a monitoring and implementation committee which will have oversight, ensuring that what you say you're going to do, and reporting to the Parliament on biannually, as to what is happening with the various ministries, where have they gone. And I think that is going to be very helpful with the procurement regulation, because a lot of them just are not compliant.
Now, I'm not entirely sure, because you mentioned the DPP. One of the things when you brought it up, I thought that was a good point, because I'm not entirely sure if it was brought up on the campaign trail, and that's a very big deal for any sort of crime-fighting effort. But I guess it's a similar thing with that whole question about the efficiency and yes, corruption was spoken about, but with regards to awarding contracts, with regards to things like the procurement regulation, with regards to the efficiency, because they're doing their own thing. So now we're going into accountability specifically, right?
Right. But
one of the things with national security that I have been talking about, and I have speculated and believed to be true, is a lack of accountability in those services. And to some extent, yes, there's probably a lack of accountability in the rest of the public service. Is this something that, even though it might not have been spoken about in specific terms on the campaign trail, because I could be wrong, but I don't remember it being a very specific issue. It might have been spoken about generally, right? This is something that we should also look at, even from the beginning, to see how they're going to manage the government, because I would agree with you, a whole new ministry, I don't know about that. I would think because you have so many ministers now and the responsibilities are reduced and more focused, there's an easier capacity for the ministers themselves to try to enforce compliance and accountability within their own ministry to whatever degree that they can. And if for whatever technical reason they can't, then it could be ventilated and remedies, you know, it might need a legislative remedy. Fine, that could happen, and they might not need the opposition to pass any such legislation. But the point is, we haven't seen anything done about this.
Well,
for the last 10 years.
It's early days,
yeah.
But what I will say in response to what you're saying, first thing, Section 7 of the amended Procurement Act excluded national security from the oversight of the procurement regulator. And that, you understand why, because national security, so I think you have to weigh that carefully. What you want to have, though, is what you find out much later in the day is 435 scanners not working. The OVVs, only 4 of them are operational. The 2 hostile ships are not were down. So you see that they're buying all this all this equipment and providing it through the budget, and yet what's the point if nothing is working? You don't find out for years. So
well, I think the Whitehall situation kind of showed we have a maintenance problem. We knew that we had a maintenance problem, but I feel as though whether it's PTSD buses, whether it's the Coast Guard ships, whether it's police vehicles, whether it's Whitehall, whether it's the gate in the Red House when it was recently opened and it collapsed on a guard, yeah, you forgot about that? Yeah. Not too long after it opened and a gate fell.
He survived, though.
Right, I believe he did, yes. But my point is, we seem to have like a maintenance and to some extent, when I say implementation, I don't mean policy. Now I just mean like we build a thing. But the maintenance issue, this is one of those things, obviously the government now can't do anything to kind of prove they're going to solve that now. This is going to have to take some time to show that they're doing it. This is also one of those things that, if you want to improve things, we kind of would like to see this because money is wasted when it's not.
Well, let me just say, I think I have to draw a distinction clearly between maintenance of national security.
Assets?
Absolutely, because that's part of the fight of crime. And one way you can defeat the fight on crime is to not have the equipment that has been allocated and spent, the money spent, sometimes not even spent, working. And so that I think that that requires, and I've said it before on this show, that you need something like that. I mean, Jamaica has a legislation, I think it was supposed to be implemented this year, passed this year, where they would have a committee that would require the government to set out their plan for the year, set out how their fiscal policies, and then hold them accountable to that and be able to publish a report on their website and once a year to the cabinet. So maybe we need to look at something like that. But it's not an easy thing to fix. It's not an easy fix. And when you talk about the Whitehall, I heard you on it. When and they spend this money, but they did spend that money when Mr. Pandey was there too, right? So, and he did a good job. It looked beautiful. What's wrong with maintaining our 7?
The Magnificent 7.
Yes,
yeah.
I mean, God, it's part of your heritage.
Yeah.
It's part of...
Just yesterday, I think I saw tourists walking around the Savannah by the Magnificent 7,
us,
right next to Whitehall.
Exactly.
Right next to Whitehall.
It's a part of our heritage. Why wouldn't you want to keep those things for the next and the next and the next generation? I mean, I can't understand that argument. But I also think there's a lot of... I'm saying this maybe on a more personal level, and I heard Sean speak about it, but I wouldn't give it so much oxygen, because to me it looks like politicking, and hearing one person saying that thing and the other one saying something, then he's saying this thing.
I think that's the part of the point that I did not bring across strongly enough. It's a he said, she said now.
And is it, you know what I mean? Let's give it a little chance now. And I mean, it looks almost like a distraction, really.
Yeah.
And do we need that? You don't think we need that? I mean, you could bring it. I mean, it seemed like it was blown out. Listen, it just looked as though you were looking for something to complain about right off the top, and then you had this tug-of-war between them. I mean, the country's tired of that. It's tired. I'm not saying you don't bring issues that are important in life, and I'm not saying Whitehall is not important, but it's an old building. They're going to have structural issues. People build houses, and when they build houses, they have to, after a while, there's a 6-month period where the contractor is responsible.
So responsible.
Right. So, I mean, let's be fair, And, it's just too much confusion. You're hearing this version and that version. You don't know what to believe of the versions. So, I don't know. It just seemed a lot of sound and fury signaling. nothing.
I guess, right, part of it is you would like to see, look, if the opposition wants to be a typical opposition, that's up to them. But at the very least, the government coming down to the wire, the campaign that they led was more one of hope and positivity. It seemingly worked. And I guess we don't want to see them revert back to the typical of who could point fingers and the tit for tat. Like, all right, like, and to be fair, it wasn't the Prime Minister that did it. But
he's in the office of the Prime Minister. That is his position. He's Minister of Public Utilities and he's also the Minister in the office of the Prime Minister. So he's a spokesperson.
Right, right.
Appoint a communications person, which I don't think they have. So he was
No, I don't think there's a Minister of Communications. That office was part of the office of the Prime Minister recently. So we're waiting to see how that will work because, of course, we know that at least one minister has not been appointed yet. So the cabinet is not finished. So it doesn't have to just be limited to trade, industry, and tourism. But yeah, I guess, and I don't know if you got my opening remarks at the very top of the show, but I'm concerned that we're going to revert back to the typical style of communication as opposed to seeing these results as an indicator that the country is desiring more and we should do better when it comes to communication and leadership through communication, as opposed to, well, blame them for... Like, I get it, right? If the Treasury is bare, the Minister of Finance is in all rights to come out and say, we were left in a bad situation. No, what I mean to say, if they find bad situations, they have every right to say it now and not 7 years from now. But at the same time, moving forward, tit for tat, I don't know if it works. All right, they're telling us that we have a call on the line, so we may take a break after the first call, but we won't have him wait any longer. Digger Martin is on the line. Good morning, caller. You're on the air.
Good morning. Good morning. One of your regular first callers. And good morning to Mrs. Karen Nunes Teixeira, and I wouldn't say former finance minister. A couple of things. One of the first things I'd like, a metric was set by the Honorable Kamala Prasad predecessor. 6 months to get crime to suppress it, mitigate it. And one of the, I wouldn't say the low-hanging fruits, but one of the rosy fruits to fix immediately, and they have an opportunity. There is a merit list for the police service. The police service is crucial for us attacking crime. It's crucial, it's crucial. And we all have to be honest. There is lots of problem with the executive. This is a time to put it in the parliament and fleshed out all the question marks of all of those persons who wants to be DCP, COP, etc. And at the same time, it will tell us one thing. If we have a police service commission that is in the best interest of the people of Trinidad and Tobago, because I have had a problem with those selections. You had two very, very good people, and then you have 3 or 4 tainted that it was democratically right but morally wrong, legally right but morally wrong. So I want them to flesh out the police service, put it there, because I don't want to go in to tell you all how many of them should not be in the executive position. We have a proliferation of court cases saying the selection of superintendent, assistant superintendent, corporal was not appropriate. Remember the glitch? The police service has never come back to us and tell us what was the case. Was the glitch really margin or purposely done?
This is the promotion glitch?
Yeah.
For the 900 plus? Yeah.
Right. They have never...
That might be in the courts, and usually when something's in the courts, all of a sudden they have no ability to speak about it.
No, because it's sub judice.
I guess,
right,
yes.
Yeah, I'm just highlighting it. But to me, as an ordinary person, that might be an indication of how flawed the police service is. So I want them to fix that. For example, the police service using environmental scan. And the other day I talked to the police commissioner, Mr. Benjamin, and asked him if he's watching what is happening in Guyana with respect to a number of things. But one important thing, Guyana just gave their police force 5,000 body cameras. And that's probably one for every police there. But they have linked it so that there will be real-time viewing of what the police do. So you know what that will do to our police servers? They tell us how much of them in the grocery, how much of them liming, so how much of them go. And I think that is a question mark for the police, if they could handle that. And the police service has to look at themselves within, cleanse themselves. There's a lot of controversy with that. Remember the day of policing, but before the day of policing, a year before that, a number of officers in the police service who were protecting the then Prime Minister and the Attorney General got a disease called blue flu. I hope the whole police service now is vaccinated for blue flu. Go and have a nice morning.
Thank you, caller. I mean, let's go to that 6 months promise, because I am of a mind, I understand making it. I'm not saying that I think it's a sign that, oh, she doesn't know what she's talking about. What I am saying is, earlier, Christopher had a similar promise. It was a shorter time frame, though.
But didn't she say how much you would reduce it by? Didn't?
I'm not, Ayla, I think Ayla did.
Yeah, that is the difference. She hasn't said it's going to be reduced by 30%. She said it's going to be reduced.
Right, but I mean, to some extent, if it's a minor reduction, Karen, is it going to be palatable or acceptable? No, but my point is, a promise like that of 6 months, like, I kind of get it. I kind of get the want to offer that. I kind of get, because the public wants that. That's the thing, right? It's kind of hard to deny the public that. Whether you promise it or not, they kind of want to see a reduction in crime as soon as possible. But I do find that I wonder if it is a mistake in the fact that it is causing people to now, they have expectations that they could hold you to that are concrete as opposed to just their aspirations. And you're saying it before you actually go in there and know exactly what the issues are and how to treat it. Now, to some extent, though, Roger Alexander, as a former superintendent, he kind of has a good idea about what the issues are on the level of policing, and to some extent, deficiencies in legislation that's affecting policing. But still, there's some certain other things like the judiciary and how long it takes court matters, how that affects current matters, how that affects the death penalty, how that affects how criminals view the criminal justice system, as well as the prison service, right? And of course, we said the borders, the Coast Guard, etc. I don't know if, you know, it's a similar thing. When Ayla made the promise, I was like, you shouldn't have done that. I don't think you should have done that. It's very, very rare where I think anybody talking about national security or crime fighting should make a promise like that. Anybody, anywhere. So it's not about not liking Kamala and wanting to see her fail. It's that I kind of wish she didn't do this, because it sets herself up. She's setting herself up that if things don't work out, whether it's a fault of her own or no fault of her own, for a negative press that I don't think she needs, to be honest, or a negative perception. It gives the opposition fuel that you know, she doesn't need to give them. I don't think it was necessary for her to make the promise. I wouldn't have, I didn't need her to make a definitive promise. I hope she could do it now. And now that she's made it, to some extent, it would be best for her if she can do it. But it's a tall task, because, and I think this is why, you and I both know, the transnational crime is a major effect. Turning that around very quickly is not going to be that easy. And just the amount of crime we have is burdening the system to the point where it's similar to COVID. The sheer amount is making the task more difficult to get a handle on it.
I was looking to see if she gave a number. And in 2024, she said 10%, but I don't think in her original statement she actually gave a percentage.
Yeah.
But in any event, we'll wait to see what happens. And yes, it was a chance the Prime Minister took, because one of the things I think people, generally the electorate, is a little wary of promises kept and broken, promises kept and not followed through. So many. You know, so I think I hope that she succeeds, because that's good for us. But it can affect the credibility.
But let me actually be devil's advocate to my own fears. Part of crime fighting, we've said on Talking Point, is perception at times might be even more important than reality. People need to perceive the system to be strong so that they will be wary of the consequences and not break the law. Some people just need to be wary of consequences. Not everybody is a good person, right? one of the things that, whether you like him or not, Gary Griffith did somewhat well is he improved the perception of the situation.
True.
Right?
He did.
So this could be a way to say, look, I have confidence that we could get it done. So people start to move forward on the right foot from the start, and they move with energy and a purpose as opposed to,
That's
oh gosh,
true.
this is a tall mountain. I don't know if it's going to work. I'm just offering the theory that now came to me that maybe she's wanting to show confidence off the bat. Some leaders do that, and it is a gamble because, again, as you said, if it doesn't work.
Yeah, especially after so many years of broken promises, 10 years of a lot of broken promises. And I think we are weary of it, and I mean, both the weary, the two spellings, weary and weary, the two, tired and weary. We're watching with, jaundiced eyes to some extent, not her fault, really, but it is the reality of our experience. So let's wait and see how they turn around crime. Based on the initial plans, the only one that does bother me is TTRA.
Yeah, that I think more of an explanation would be forthcoming for that. I don't know if you're going to get
it. And she came right off the bat and said she's losing.
The problem is it was a campaign promise.
Yeah, but
and a lot of their support is Labour. I know you don't agree with it. We'll get into that. We'll take the call first. Tunapuna on the line. Good morning. Caller, you on the air.
Hello, good morning.
Morning.
Yeah, calling from Tunapuna. I just want to talk about two things. The concern that people had with funding the promises made by the UNC government. I just want to bring to you all how it can be done. And it's simple. It's the prudential, economic, and practical culture of the UNC, which is different to the PNM. And that is going to be achieved simple because of the practical, economical, practical, prudential culture of the UNC. I mean, that's very hard to digest, but there's a difference between the PNM and the UNC where money and finance are concerned. Karen can blame me out with this. Another point I want to make that you all, with due respect, were commenting on about COVID and so well COVID was handled by the RC. That was far from the truth. COVID, in respect of death, for Trinidad and Tobago was #1 in the Caribbean. And per capita, COVID, as respect to death and per capita in the world, we ranked 20th, Trinidad and Tobago. So that was a lie that was disseminated to the population, and some of our commentators, rather than investigating it, run away with it. So we did not perform well where COVID was concerned. We made a mess of COVID. Okay, gentlemen, are you ready?
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Let me just say, you want to go ahead?
No, I want to say, I don't think I said we performed well. I think the Ministry of Health responded well. And I also said today, ultimately, the response to COVID, and this was not saying the ministry's response, but the response to COVID by the government of the time was inconsistent. Because Terence Singh was not in charge of the border. And that was that was the biggest gaping flaw of our COVID response. Something that he wasn't responsible for. Because the borders were open. I've said it before, right? There was speculation from the jump. After Carnival in 2020, we had a COVID spike. The rumor was it was because of illegal immigrants. People didn't want to say that, or how you could say that. But the fact of the matter is, once we got the Latin American variant, when the borders were supposed to be closed for months, it couldn't be that it spawned out of nowhere here. And that's when one of the spikes was just because of that. I believe it was Gamma at the time. So I get it. I didn't say that the government's response to COVID was good.
Okay, so let me just say this. And I think Sean did say that about perception. So there was that perception. I certainly share that perception. And in 2021, WHO praises TNT pandemic strategy and leadership. So that is on record in February 18, 2021. So there was an acknowledgement or the early closure of our borders was praised, for want of a better word, by the director, WHO's Director General, Dr. Tedros, I can't pronounce his last name.
I forgot.
Noted that vulnerable nations continue at risk of being left behind due to unequal bargaining power. Anyway, he said gave high marks to the efforts of Trinidad and Tobago in combating the pandemic. So it is not just what we have said, and that I think accounts to a large extent for why the PNM was brought back into office, because I think one of the pollsters that is highly respected, he indicated that when in the 2020 elections, when people were literally dying and people knew somebody who died or got the COVID virus themselves, they said 67% of the population was more concerned about COVID, and then economy and crime would, fell on the side. So you have to understand that to many people, and what you're seeing was happening in Italy, what you're seeing happening in the United States, what you're having in New York, what's happening in India. I mean, it was horrific. And it gave Jack his jacket, whatever you may say. And Terence the Yalsing, I admired him at the beginning when he would come out and be transparent. Although you say he wasn't being, but I think he was being, because he was I don't have any reason to disbelieve what he did. And so that had a lot of impact on why by PNM administration under Dr. Rowley, who's not exactly the most likable person, I don't know how else to say it. He wanted a strong government. He wanted a government that was going to be able to deal with it. And if you say, don't go by this river, you ain't going by the river. Don't go in the sea, you can't go by the sea. Don't gather. People listen to him.
The problem was they were hypocritical, at least rumored to be, right?
But the perception is reality.
But so what they set up at the start, I believe, this is the thing, we have to understand, everybody's judging COVID with hindsight.
Exactly.
At the time, there was no playbook on what to do.
Exactly.
We never had a pandemic.
And look what happened in New York. Do you see what's the governor lost his job because of how the handling of COVID? Look at Italy.
Italy had phased lockdowns, which basically just pushed the infection throughout the country. And the horror that the doctors had, because I was following it before it was a global news story. And I was seeing interviews where some doctors were saying they were consulting with their colleagues in Italy, and those doctors in Italy, basically, they didn't know what to do. So the thing is, for the first 6 months to a year, at the end of the day, you could disagree with lockdowns, but the fact of the matter is nobody knew what to do. Now, if you want to go into year 2 and say that the lockdowns were excessive, right, and at that point when it becomes endemic to the population, they're unnecessary, that's a different argument. But more importantly, the borders not being secure. And I've said this before and I'll say this again. And this is where the government had a big failure at the time. And why we had COVID spikes. We had illegal immigrants that potentially brought COVID in, right? While we had our own citizens locked out of the country for a significant amount of time, especially from the start. Some of it was their fault when the government said, please don't travel. They traveled anyway. And, well, you know, you take your chances and it ends up what happened to you. But not everybody, I think, was necessarily within that position, and they were stuck outside the country for God knows how long.
And I also have, this is 2020, which buys into what you're saying. It says Trinidad and Tobago is among the countries winning the fight against COVID-19. This is according to the latest rankings by data tracking website coronavirus.com. The site rates countries as either winning, nearly there, or needs action, depending on the ruling 7-day average of their new confirmed cases. Among the list of the winners were countries like Australia, Iceland, Vietnam, New Zealand. From the Caribbean, St. Kitts and Nevis, Dominica, the Bahamas was also controlling the new cases of viruses. Among where did Trinidad fall? Anyway, the point about it, the other point in here, I just want to deal with that other point.
Well, I also want to deal with it too.
What is the point?
But we have two callers on WhatsApp. So okay. Hold on, we have two callers on WhatsApp. But also our success, people who are running from COVID will come to us, and Italy showed that's how you get the infection.
And those are developed nation status.
So,
we are supposed to be developing. I can't agree with you on that one, I have to say.
We have the first caller from WhatsApp. Last two calls for the morning, because we have stuff to get through. But the first caller, good morning, caller, you're on here.
Morning, hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, caller. Go ahead, you're on here.
All right, now it is happening to see all the ideas from everybody coming out now on the way forward for Trinidad. What I would like, though, you see the planning part?
Yeah.
they need about 300 people to sit down in a room. They could rotate it for about a week. Because this is too big a task for the current cabinet. All right, because it's several areas. For example, you can't want to build more houses and you improve the water supply.
That's a good point.
That's one.
That's a good point.
If you're talking about agriculture, now remember that Star Road from Princestown to St. Helena. You see that piece of land between them? It could be developed for chicken and corn, among other things. But the government needs the will, and they also need some private partnership to go forward. Have a good day, people.
Thank you, caller. 300 might be too much in certain contexts, but I think the point you're making, the principle is valid. You need a lot of people to help just do the work.
Who says they don't have that, though? I mean,
that's true.
Don't say that. It's too early to make a pronouncement, but it's glad that he's giving the contribution.
I think the thing is, caller saying 300 people in a room. You don't really want 300 people in a room, but there are going to be more than 300 people working on planning because they're going to be spread out around all the ministries. It's just now, how do you structure it to bring it all together in a practical way? That's the challenge, right, of any government. We have the second caller from WhatsApp. Caller, are you there?
Yes, good morning. Calling from Trin City. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, we can hear you very clear.
Yeah, good morning to you, Sean Michael Small, and your guest. Just a couple of things I want to outline.
Of course.
We in Trinidad must manage our affairs based on the reality of what is global. We have to understand that, otherwise we're going to be going wrong in circles.
Yeah.
Captain Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso woke up this morning. And that means he survived the 21st attempt on his life. Hit put on him by the US intelligence, British intelligence, and French intelligence. And that's real. We know it, we have to talk it, we have to understand it. Because the West are after the resources of the African continent. Right. COVID. We started off good, we ended up bad.
Yeah.
Because our death rate was very high. The last caller said we were among the highest in the Caribbean, and that is true. The WHO's submission somewhere in 2021, that is also true. But at the end of it, the administration, which is Mr. Diyal Singh's colleagues in national security, did not do a good job in securing the borders. And that are reasons: availability of vessels and fuel for the vessels, or all that kind of thing, right? So I bring up the WHO because a lot of us did not know that the government of Goa, the local government of Goa in India, took the WHO to court because the WHO told the government of Goa, you can't use ivermectin. When all the multinational corporations pulled out of India and started making vaccines in Germany and Austria, etc. So that was they were in a pickle with regard to that. The Minister of Goa said, forget them, go ahead and use the ivermectin, save lives. The ivermectin, save lives. and that is the fact. In understanding our drug problem, we have to secure our borders in a particular way, to not to allow drugs to further infiltrate the country. The way how it's set up, I believe it can work, and I'm agreeing with you all that Homeland Security, Minister of Defense, because we have a drug problem. We must do that understanding that the war on drugs that was promoted by Ronald Reagan was a lie.
True, that's true.
It was at a time where drug use was at an all-time low.
That's true.
That war on drugs was the precursor to the FBI flooding the black communities with drugs. What you have now is a very high incarceration rate of black men inside the prison. So whilst we're solving our drug problem, We must know what's going on with our American neighbors in terms of the drug problem, because there's profit in prison in the US. We have to know these things. We have to know. The United States not interested in your resources. They just don't want us to have a relationship with a sovereign country called Venezuela. We have to protect ourselves from those external shocks, understand the big giants in the game, and protect ourselves from the effects of those giants against each other. Because the United States and the West want Venezuela oil. That is it. The Chavez and Maduro about drug running and human trafficking, that evidence never reached the International Criminal Court. There was a court in the US that I wouldn't believe. I don't care about that. That is rubbish. Understand where we are globally, develop our relationship with countries that we ought to, protecting ourselves from global shock.
All right, caller.
Because you're small.
I'll have to ask to end it there because we have one last caller.
But I do want to comment on that thing with the drugs and the new Jim Crow laws, which started with Nixon and not Reagan. But I want to comment.
Well, the Jim Crow,
Yeah, I do want to comment. There's a book written on it, and your excellent contribution, very well read, very informative. And I do want to say a little bit more on that because you were on the point, but I can say a little more on it.
One of the things I just want to say,
please let me.
The war on drugs, part of the reason why the penalties were so harsh was because the communities, because they were sold on the fact that, we need harsh penalties, right?
No, it was the crack versus the cocaine. And the crack and the 3 strikes and you're out. My brother is a doctor, was in Washington when he said it was like an epidemic in Washington. The black communities, they targeted the black communities. And Nixon, I have to say this, Nixon, when he was going up for the election, he said 2 sets of people he wants to get rid of. Those fighting the hippies with the anti-Vietnam position they took, and the black people who he could no longer deal with in the same way he dealt with when they had the segregation law. So he found out, you know what? We're going to add that drug thing. And it is true what the reporter did say, drugs was not an issue. And then Reagan and all of them coming out and incarcerating black youths and bringing them at 5 o'clock. One of Nixon's advisors, why he's so strongly about this. Okay, I have to talk about that.
Historically, African Americans were much better off before.
Not only that.
No, it's a show that, yes, you're right, something went wrong there.
No, I can say more specifically.
But we do have San Fernando to
general.
take the
general, and I think it's a good point the gentleman made.
Yes, morning.
Yeah, morning. Like I try my weekend there, and nearly forget all your poets.
Sorry.
Passion.
I will be very quick then. I want to just not include my shopping list for now, and encourage others to hold their hand a little bit. However, I have a suggestion. You see that thing about food security, and we have a problem with pricing the grocery and all kind of thing? Some years ago, there was a prime minister called Patrick Manning, and he had introduced a cooperative, right? A cooperative in Pleasantville. The intent of that was to have people in the area be part of it, and they will go on to bring in goods wholesale, retail to the members at a very low cost. As a matter of fact, it could even be close to credit union, because you go to the grocery, some of them have the money, they wait until they get pension, they could go and get grocery. We should have that. That's what we should have. And forget all them big groceries and all of them who taking me for it, she's not going with it. and tell Mousie, I mean, not Mousie, Mr. Karen, tell her to see she could include that in the next budget. Thank you.
Of course, I'm not going to be there, but I have to.
I just want to say the problem is the big groceries might very heavily lobby against that.
Can I just say about the Jim Crow laws? I feel
very
passionate about that.
I want to take the second comment first. We won't forget the first comment, but just because I think
somebody else is waiting to.
No, we have a comment that was sent to our social media. So if you could put the second one about rocket science up.
I said something like that.
Yeah, not every issue problem requires a rocket science approach, but a common sense / practical one.
Mr. Manning told me that.
And now I'm
Minister of Finance.
I understand that sentiment, but the reality is it's not so clear-cut. You need to kind of understand and apply that, while also understanding that the problems are that complicated once you get to that level.
Common sense, you'll be able to do that.
Right? But sometimes common sense is not
Book sense? You don't
It's
need
not
always book sense.
the
You know.
best
You can buy
approach
book sense.
for certain things.
Anyway, I don't want to go off on that. I want to
sense-
say, I have to say something about the drug because I was so pleased to hear that gentleman say what he said. One of my brothers who is in the States had told me, one of his colleagues told him about the new Jim Crow law, which is a book written by this lady, and I feel you must get a copy of it. Because what they said, what I already said about Nixon, and Reagan made that his clarion call, because the blacks were not voting for the Republicans, so they had to find a way to destroy them. What they did, and that's why that mayor with this thing, he started this campaign about break the windows. Julian, broken windows. That was used for racism because the idea was supposed to be that before it escalates to murder, when they break a window, you then deal with it there. But what they did is use that as an opportunity to go into black neighborhoods, and instead of creating community and building those communities, they made them a target. If America, look at the logic in it, this is just pure, plain logic. Blacks make up 13% of the population. The rest of the population is mostly Caucasian. You go in the universities, those young university students are doing drugs. They're smoking the marijuana, they're taking the ecstasy, they're doing the drugs. How come they're not arrested? The population, before they made drugs a national crisis, which was manufactured, just like how the gentleman said, it is true. Before they made it, you would see the population in the prisons consistent with the population in the country. When they made that their clarion call, that gentleman in one of those Central American countries was flooding United States with crack cocaine, which was much cheaper. I mean, my brother would tell me, you just see people walking around like ghosts in
I actually think it's in a way worse than what you think, because there's been rumors, speculations, publications that the American government may have been complicit in parts of the drug trade.
Oh yes, with that guy, with the guns.
So then you profit on the drug trade. Now all of a sudden you're concerned about drugs in your own country.
And it was not
the ideology of the war on crime, the war on drugs, was also to some extent exported. And I think a lot of jurisdictions now, this is the key point, because this is how it affects us directly. The approach of using, I understand drugs are bad, but I think to some extent, and it's not an apples-to-apples comparison, but you saw what happened to alcohol bootleggers once prohibition was repealed in the United States. All of a sudden, that source of criminal income just evaporated, right? I'm not saying to legalize drugs, but the approach on it. You want to, okay, Karen.
I want to finish my point.
Because we have the same approach.
Okay, but I come to it with a very great passion over this issue. And the passion comes from the fact that they did two things. They separated the crack, the penalty for crack, from cocaine. And crack is much cheaper and it was easy, and they flooded those communities with that. And then they said in an article I read, the person who was the advisor to Nixon, he said that they had a plan, it was in Vanity Fair, and they had taken it out in the first publication, that they deliberately had reporters going into these neighborhoods where these people don't have protection. They're out on the streets. Right? They come in, and you're always looking suspicious. That's what they use, you know, with that break here, whatever that thing. You're looking suspicious. You're looking, that is anything. You're targeting these people, putting them on the 5 o'clock news, parading them, and then giving this unskewed impression that these young men, and then when you implement the parole, many of them, the conditions were so strict that they would then be back in the system. And if you look, I think eventually Obama realized it was systemic racism, because he was one of them, including Clinton, who talked about these young men as thugs, until he realized when he went into the prison system and saw that many of these young black men, and that's happening in this country too, it's happening, and that's why I'm so passionate about it. It's in this country also. The young black men were targeted. You're going to go in the upscale neighborhoods and people's house. You're not going to make that mistake. They have private security. You're not going to make that. But the little man who's standing up outside of Nelson Street and Charles Street, he's easy pickings. And you want to get this impression that how are they getting $15,000 guns? How are they getting $10,000 guns? Come on. You know, and eventually Obama had to admit that was systemic racism, because if you just look at the percentage of people who are white in America, I'm sorry to put it that boldly, It only makes sense that they should be the ones in the prison. And that was the case before the war on drugs, the war on drugs, the war on black people and young black African men. That is what it is. And it has translated into this country where we do not face the fact that a lot of them are at the bottom of the bar because that's where we want them to be, because you need them to recruit them. And you don't feel ashamed of that when you have all of these wealthy people, can't have enough cars, can't have enough houses. So what's wrong with them wanting us to rebuke you, encouraging that person, that thing? And you can see from my passion, it is something I feel very, very strongly about. And I am tired of people labeling young black men like that, because I go to church and I see a lot of young black men in my church. I see St. Joseph Convent where I went, and I see a lot of young black girls going there. I see, what is that school that the president and the prime minister's wife came from? Oh, gosh, sorry, I don't mean any offense to them, because there's, not Providence, not Holy Name, the other one by,
Bishops?
Bishops, yes, they went Bishops, you know.
My mother went Bishops.
Huh?
My mother went Bishops.
Well, exactly, but a lot of black girls go to that school. A lot of them, why is this this labeling and accepting this labeling? Why do you accept that label? I'm very, very passionate about that. It's time to break away from that. I have to finish because I am on the pedestal and I'm on the soapbox. And I just want to say, in conclusion, that is one of the reasons why they said that Trump got some young black votes. Because what he did is he was persuaded to remove the distinction between crack and cocaine. So they would not treat it how they did it, which was targeting the young black men. And also, their law is such that if you have been served a thing for possession of drugs or selling and so on, you cannot get, there's so many things you are prevented from accessing because of that, housing, number of things. This system is, and I want Trinidad and Tobago to break up to that and understand we have to stop that negativity and stop that self-blame and self-hatred and understand that there are people who have an interest in keeping you right where you are so that you do not think well of yourself. So that's my last thing on my soapbox for today.
I just want to add to our previous point Karen made, because who is in charge of the transnational crime and the real big players?
Exactly.
And the fact that we don't, listen, if there is an Afro-Trinidadian who's a big player, regardless, it's not like we see those people at that level, when we're talking about the shot callers at that level, get arrested, right? To some extent, the expectations on crime is to deal with street-level crime. And
what is that? As a symptom.
We do wonder how far that could actually save the situation, right?
You know what that is? You know what that's what you call that? Trying to fool people. Stop being fooled by that, okay? They get a cache of guns, they get a thing. Stop being fooled by that. And they're always talking about marijuana, not cocaine. You notice that? No cocaine in it.
When the Americans are involved, we get cocaine.
That's when the Americans are involved.
We have to get a comment out that it was close to the top of the show, but after the topic was passed, if White House was recently renovated or upgraded, maybe the works might be on warranty and can be repaired without additional cost. No, I don't think it's been too many years. It's recent that you don't expect a major issues to still be there. But it's not so recent that the contractor, unless it was in the contract that they're maintaining the building, like with the Ministry of Health building, when it flooded, NH had to deal with that. And that's why NH made the building, and they are still running the building until the pay-to lease period is over. For years, they are on the hook for maintaining the building.
I would put it that way.
Well, but my point is their responsibility, it's not government responsibility. Right? So they have an interest to ensure that everything works. That's good. So it's a lot more transparent. We know, they have a financial interest, right?
have to finish now,
I know. There was a point with regards to UNC's more prudent or practical culture. Here's the thing, though. You could judge their culture however way you want to slice it. They made promises. The promises are programs that are going to be in addition to the current expenditure, whichever way you slice it, the PNM were basically trying to hold on to what they didn't want to give up. And it's not like we have extra money coming from anywhere.
You know what it was? Sean? When he said that, what the Prime Minister should do to build her credibility and so on, pass the campaign financing legislation. Because we know that if whoever it is giving you you say the UNC, however they finance it differently from the PNM, They don't do it because they love you so much. They do it, yes, they love you and they want you to win, but they also expect some return for their investment. That's a ROI. So we need to pass the campaign financing legislation, which Jamaica has, and which has been sitting down and languishing in Joint Select Committee for ever so long, at least in about 8-9 years. And I had the MSJ, he was on the show with me one time on another program, and we went through the legislation. So I would like to see that passed, because that will deal with a lot of the corruption in the award of contracts.
But more importantly, prudent spending right now would mean a lot more cuts, not a lot more additions without cuts. That's the thing. And they made promises, and it's still a relevant question how they're going to finance that. That's why the Minister of Finance said what he said, and I applaud him for that. We have to look at the books and see what's going on. That's why they're not...
the PNM said when they came in, they all say that.
I know they all say that, but the point is they need to continue in that line of thought, right, with regards to managing expectations.
People understand.
Right, because that's what's practical, Kola, right? We're not just going to get everything that we want. That happened to the TPP as well. It is what it is, right? When they came in, it's just how successful they communicate that point and how well they set up our expectations that are realistic.
Okay, so I will say one thing. Because, it is going to be my final word. The reason why the PNM was seen to have lost was both on the crime and economy. I think people understand where we are with foreign exchange because they go in the bank and they can't get it. Yeah. People understand they don't have jobs because they can't find jobs. So I think people know that the situation with the economy is in a dire state, and they will have the patience, and many of the projects with the gas project are coming online for 2027, so there should be an easing up on the situation. I think people are prepared to hold their hand, because it's not a secret that the economy is about. However we got there, I'm not going into that, but people know that that is so, and so it's not going to be this surprise that where the economy is. It might be more of a surprise, but not a surprise.
And you can be as prudent as you want. But that was the final word. So thanks to all the callers. Thanks, of course, Karen, for joining me. This is Talking About the Blaze in the Content Capital. Sean Michael Small telling you to have a good day. Stay true to the Republic and to each other. Stay safe. And we'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
WESN.
My name is Dr. Stephen Carroll, the CEO at Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist, and we are committed to making good private health care affordable.
For all your medical needs, including dental, radiology, laparoscopy, behavioral and mental health, along with many other services, contact us for more information at 235-5479.
Community Hospital of Seventh.